Hey guys, episode 19 of the YoJoeShow podcast, can you believe it? We've hit over 250,000 views thanks to you awesome people. Today we're diving into some crazy stuff. Coldplay drama, Sydney Sweeney's ad controversy, global issues, military heroes, and even Tesla news. Oh, and we'll end with some laughs because why not? So hit that like button, subscribe, and smash that notification bell. Let's do this.
Brace yourself. Tech, politics, health. It's all here. Join thousands shocked by the YoJoeShow's unfiltered truths. Smash that subscribe button now and blow your mind.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the YoJoeShow podcast. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Yo, how you doing?
Today? I'm awake and alive.
I'm doing good too. Heart's beating, lungs are working, and ready for episode 19.
Let's cha-ching onwards.
The last episode, being aside from all the other things we covered, we certainly couldn't help but spend a fair amount of time on what happened at the Coldplay concert. And it seems that's died down, but there's one last lick I think was taken just this past week for those who haven't seen it. I know you've seen the Gwyneth Paltrow commercial for Astronomer, but I think we should put it on.
I actually haven't yet.
You haven't? We'll discuss that. I thought you had pulled it up. Then
No.
You definitely need to see it too, like everyone else. Let's put it up, and then let's discuss.
I think it's a brilliant move by their marketing team, even without seeing it yet.
Brilliant. Hilariously brilliant. Let's put it up, and we can then talk about that. It's a good way to get started here. All right, let's take a look.
Thank you for your interest in Astronomer. Hi, I'm Gwyneth Paltrow. I've been hired on a very temporary basis to speak on behalf of the 300-plus employees at Astronomer. Astronomer has gotten a lot of questions over the last few days, and they wanted me to answer the most common ones. Yes, Astronomer is the best place to run Apache Airflow, unifying the experience of running data, ML, and AI pipelines at scale. We've been thrilled so many people have a newfound interest in data workflow automation. As for the other questions we've received.
Question, how is your social media?
Yes, there is still room available at our Beyond Analytics event in September. We will now be returning to what we do best, delivering game-changing results for our customers. Thank you for your interest in Astronomer.
So for those not watching, questions were being typed on the screen, and she's not answering the actual questions. What in the F, blah, 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 and she answered a different question. How's your social media team holding up? And then she answers, yes, there's still room at the conference.
It's just such a smart tackle. I think you mentioned last time that Gweneth actually dated
Chris Martin, the lead singer who outed the CEO on the Jumbotron screen on the Kiss Cam. He used to date Gwyneth Paltrow. So it's like hilarious that of all the people that Astronomer could have as what they refer to as a very temporary spokesperson is obviously by design Gwyneth Paltrow. It's obviously just a mocking, hilarious joke.
The way to capitalize on all their attention that they're getting, which isn't at the moment is negative attention, but it's just the kind of way to turn it into productive attention with responding. So she's talking about all the realistic technology that Astronomer is working on instead of actually responding to the questions about all the BS hype about the attention the company has been getting that's unrelated. So it's like driving people to their conference to talk about their software and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's a very smart move, to just a good way of capitalizing on all the attention that they're getting. No news is good news, or how does the sentence go?
No news is good news, oftentimes.
Bad news is good news, or something. There's a
no. So all publicity is good publicity. That's
all publicity is good publicity.
From the Barnum and Bailey fame of back in the circus days. So even bad PR is good PR because it's PR, and people are, again, how much free advertising did Astronomer, a company that the average person had never heard of, how much free advertising did they get in the mainstream and basically all over the internet for at least a good week's cycle, probably closer to 2 weeks. And
it's billions of dollars worth of attention.
Oh, yeah,
they got billions of dollars worth of attention. Yes, it's in a negative connotation. Luckily for them, it's not a negative connotation necessarily about the company or its technology or its performance. Instead, it's negative connotation about a specific individual who no longer works for the company.
At least a couple specific. at least a couple of specific individuals. But right, like I said, that's old news, and company moves on, and it actually benefited way by getting some unbelievable advertising that they would have never been able to afford or envision being able to have. But marketing is such a big thing, right? That being said, obviously that was the last news cycle. This news cycle has lots of media attention on another marketing campaign. And ultimately, who would have thought that, hey, science and genetics would play that big a role in advertising, but it can. And there's been a huge uproar and perhaps a lot of accolades, depending who you ask, on the most current American Eagle Outfitters gene campaign. And boy, those blue jeans are getting a lot of attention.
Wait, is that jeans with a G or jeans with a J, or is that the question?
That's the play on words, exactly. You would think it'd be benign enough, someone saying, hey, I have good genes, and that's basically was the catchphrase. But let's see what it turned into. We have a couple of clips. Let's start with the first introductory one that talks a little more about the whole marketing scheme and how important marketing can be and how good it could be or how bad it could be. Let's take a look.
Time to check the pulse. We begin with the backlash over a new ad campaign featuring actress Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, the ads are for American Eagle, and the tagline is, Sydney Sweeney has great genes. Now, in one ad, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed actress talks about genes as in DNA being passed down from her parents.
The play on words is being compared to Nazi propaganda with racial undertones.
Oh boy, here we go.
The pun, good genes, activates troubling historical associations for this country. The American eugenics movement in its prime between 1900 and 1940 weaponized the idea of good genes just to justify white supremacism.
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
Beautiful ads are in. Yes, welcome to 2025, where Dylan Mulvaney has been replaced by Sydney Sweeney, and consumers are loving it.
Now, actress Sydney Sweeney is facing some heat after her latest brand deal and advertising campaign with American Eagle. The campaign, titled Sydney Sweeney Has Great Genes, has generated mixed reactions on social media. Now, look, many people are happy with the ad. Some are saying that this is the death of woke ads, but there are also some, probably on the far left, going crazy and going so far to say that this is Nazi propaganda. Look at this.
You guys are complaining about that Sydney Sweeney jeans ad, so I went and saw it. That's Nazi propaganda. Wow. I thought it was gonna be like bad. That's gonna be in history book.
It's interesting to note, though, with all the kind of comments like that are online, the shares of American Eagle actually went up after that Sydney Sweeney ad. Of course, people will say what they want on social media. What do you make of these comments?
Well, the ads aren't offensive, but the comments are. Anyone who's going to use the Nazi word in this reference and not be talking about World War II or the persecution of Jewish people is making a very obscene and offensive statement to Jewish society and society as a whole. And I mean, it's a play on words. Great.
Sky News contributor Megan Kelly mocked those on the left who have slammed the ad.
You know what? The whole thing's so annoying. I'm here to tell you, there's nothing wrong with being blonde, blue-eyed, and white. Nothing.
And beautiful, and 11 out of 10, and somebody who'd stop traffic. Come on.
Your administration has been very open about the fact that American women are not having enough babies. We know that you have addressed this. There was an ad this week. Sydney Sweeney, an actress, was in an ad for blue jeans. Yeah. The ad is doing very well. It's very popular. The jeans are sold out. Does America need to see more ads like that and maybe fewer ads with people like Dylan Mulvaney on the cover?
I think the Dylan Mulvaney ad was perhaps the most unsuccessful ad in history. It knocked $35 billion off the value of a certain company. You know what I'm talking about. That was one of the great disasters of all time. I would say it's probably the most unsuccessful ad, worst ad ever. Advertising's a very funny thing. I've done ads where I thought they were lousy and they turned out to be iconic. And then I've done some that I thought were beauties, they're going to be fantastic, and they weren't so good. So to each his own. But the Dylan Mulvaney ad was a total disaster.
Did you like that little ad that I snuck in there at the end?
Yeah, I have great genes and it's not even close.
Yeah, that's an AI picture of Donald Trump in jeans.
But that interview with Finnerty is real?
Yeah, this is craziness. Yeah, it's real. But ultimately, there's just been this outrage. I can't, what? Like, what?
It's the dying gasps of the woke mind virus. I
Yeah.
think mentioned from Dylan Mulvaney, for anybody and any of our international viewers who aren't familiar, that's this transgender man dressing as a female or the opposite. It was a beer campaign, and it got huge backlash because it was about the company trying to attract new viewers. And yeah, I think it was stupid because they were one of the most successful companies and they have this huge capital in traditional America, right? So they really kicked themselves in the foot. It cost them $35 billion. They got tremendous hatred. People boycotted their products. They lost a tremendous amount of sales. Go broke. And still am a very strong supporter of that because it is a mind virus. There's nothing logical or truthful or honest about it. Just a side note is the overuse and abuse of the term Nazi. Everybody's a Nazi. Everything's a Nazi. It just became the curse word of the day. And the news article mentioned it's just very disrespectful for the actual victims of the Nazis and the actual horrific actions of the Nazis. Diminishes their really horrific actions by turning everything into a Nazi.
No, absolutely. But you know what? I think people are over it and fed up with that characterization and misappropriation of all things Nazi, so to speak. So I think people are just done with it. And that's why the small but vocal minority that's in some sort of tizzy over this, people are just looking at that. It's ridiculous. I have another video here that kind of puts things in perspective and actually has the actual ads, several of them put together. The ads have been rotating on various social media platforms, and these are the actual commercials that people are so upset about. Let's take a look.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
Sydney Sweeney being sultry in a jeans ad? You'd think that's something all Americans could come together on. But the new campaign from American Eagle, starring the blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauty, has sent the woke mob into a meltdown, in part thanks to the tagline, which riffs off denim jeans and a person's genetics. This punny play on words was enough to trigger the woke mob, with many on the left interpreting it as a nod to eugenics, and some going so far as to outright call it Nazi propaganda. Political podcaster Brad Colombo compiled the most outrageous.
I bet you want to try these jeans.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
It's Sydney on set with AE. My favorite pair of jeans is probably like a straight leg or a baggy pair. On guys, straight leg. An important part of my daily routine is to ice roll my face in the morning.
That's funny. That's good. I like that.
I want to give myself a little bit of a confidence boost. I usually eat a chocolate chip cookie. It makes me happy. At the end of the day, I love to come home and play with my dog. You see the camera? Say hi. Hi.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes. Sydney Sweeney has very genes. Sydney Sweeney has very genes. Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
That is a traditional American ad.
Yeah, and that's it's a little bit refreshing seeing someone quote unquote beautiful in an ad, because for the last 5 years we've been bombarded with ads that highlight the most ugly people in society. No offense to any of them. I'm sure they're phenomenal human beings and all. I've got nothing against them personally, but I think the idea of marketing is to sell products, and you sell products by having beautiful people use them or wear them. It's just the way our biology and chemistry works, our genes. So I think that's, but yeah, no publicity is bad publicity. And this has been blowing the heck off the roof. It's been getting so much attention, and all that attention is good. And I think people are really happy to see someone beautiful in an ad again, because we've had enough seeing ads for women clothes with a man who's 400 pounds and is ugly. He's just an ugly man. I was like, why is that wearing a bra and woman's underwear? It's just absurd.
Yeah, there's been so much twisted media content in the last few years that people are just tired of it. And the supposed connection is that Nazi Germany, the whole thing was that Hitler was trying to weed out certain races and certain people and wanted only a certain bloodline. And that's the idea. But it's just an insane stretch to equate this to that. Basically, everyone knows if someone says the expression or says the words that they have good genes, it might mean that they're healthy. Hey, I have good genes. That's why my parents lived to be 100 or whatever. Or someone looks very attractive. Yeah, I got good genes. That's what this is a play on. It's nothing beyond that. And to think that people are actually able to try to stretch this into something that it absolutely isn't is beyond absurd. However, other companies are taking note, and some companies like Dunkin' with Dunkin' Donuts actually scrambled to put together an ad somewhat mocking, somewhat as a parody, just to play along with the theme. So they found a white
Grab
guy.
some attention from what's
They
going
found
on.
a young, good-looking white guy to promote one of their summer drinks. Let me put that up.
Look, I didn't ask to be the king of summer. It just happened. This tan? Genetics. I just got my color analysis back. Guess what? Golden summer. Literally. I can't help it. Every time I drink a Dunkin' Golden Hour refresher, it's like the sun just finds me. So if sipping these refreshers makes me the king of summer, guilty as charged. The Golden Hour refresher. Only a Dunkin'.
So again, they're just trying to make use of what's going on. And so they found the good-looking young guy who happens to be white, which seems to be triggering people. So you can't use white people anymore.
Although golden based on the ad.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because Megyn Kelly, when she was talking about this and saying in her interview where she was saying, I don't have a problem with white, blonde women with blue eyes. She goes on, it wasn't in the clip we played, but she goes on saying, I'm not sure about the breasts. Because Sweeney does show a lot of cleavage. But ultimately, people are having fun with it. It's not, there really isn't a big problem. The thing that's even stranger is it's funny how something that's problematic now really wasn't problematic 40 years ago. When you think the world was so much more, I don't know, up in arms about things and strict and conservative, these ads that are out, the ones for the American Eagle jeans, are a take on Calvin Klein's ads back in the 80s. We're talking over 40 years ago, 45 years ago, whatever it was, where Brooke Shields was in a series of ads when she was like 15. And the controversy then had to do with her young age and being in somewhat provocative ads. Many people haven't even seen these ads if they're not my age. I have a couple of them that I pulled up. Let me put those up. I think that should bring to light that this is nothing new. This whole take on genes, and again, it goes without saying, genes, G-E-N-E-S, sounds like jeans, J-E-A-N. And if you're talking about blue jeans, it's a very easy thing to use the two words and play with them.
Yeah, I think there are a billion people around the world who want to marry somebody with blonde hair, blue eyes. It just is what it is. Trying to say that anything beautiful is ugly and anything ugly is beautiful is what the woke mind virus has been trying to infect us over the last few years. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't.
Look, it's this. It's that just because you say you have good genes, you're not saying that my genes are the only genes that are good and everyone else's is bad. See, that other sort of false narrative is the problem, right? It's like when people during the BLM rallies, riots, and other things, we're saying all lives matter, not just black lives. Oh, that's racist. That's this, that's that. It isn't. It really wasn't intended by most people to be in any way derogatory. It's just saying, look, all lives matter. Oh, you can't say that. Why? We're trying to be inclusive. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to be inclusive. They didn't want to divide people by color. So it's we had taken this really weird turn around the world and gotten to a point where we were being exclusionary, divisive, and we didn't want any. We want everyone to feel good about who they are. That's where we're at. But let's play a couple of these old ads, and you see that this is nothing new. Here we go.
The secret of life lies hidden in the genetic code. Genes are fundamental in determining the characteristics of an individual and passing on these characteristics to succeeding generations. Occasionally, certain conditions produce a structural change in the gene, which will bring about the process of evolution. This may occur in one or more of the following ways. Firstly, by selective mating, in which a single gene type proves superior in transmitting its genes to future generations. Secondly, by gene drift, in which certain genes may fade away while other genes persist. And finally, by natural selection, which filters out those genes better equipped than others to endure in the environment. This may result in the origin of an entirely new species, which brings us to Calvin's and the
survival of the fittest. That was the ending of that.
You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing.
Calvin Klein jeans.
Nothing comes between me and my Calvins.
Yeah, that's a great ad by Calvin Klein. Just her kind of rattling off scientific facts while she's getting dressed is brilliant.
And she's talking about evolution and good genes and how the best genes get passed on. And
exactly.
She's being very scientific right there. She contorts her body into various positions.
Exactly. I think it's unsurprising that American Eagle is the first company to burst out of this woke marketing industry. American Eagle is partially owned by the Schottenstein family, which is a kind of Orthodox Jewish family, and they're probably not very woke. So I think when woke was forced upon everybody in ESG and DEI and other useless monikers, I guess they probably played along because they didn't have a choice. But now that it's over and now that Trump is president, I think they just jumped on the bandwagon. I think this is the first of many. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that American Eagle has lots and lots of beautiful black actors and models in their lineup too. It's not about being white.
Because it's not about, that's the whole thing. It's not about that. It doesn't matter. It just, and that's the whole thing that's really offensive, is if the actress happened to be black and happened to be obese or whatever, or transgender or whatever it was, and made the comment that I have great genes, no one would question it. So somehow this is this.
Everybody who would watch that ad would laugh just because.
The bottom line is whatever, you could be proud of who you are regardless, health issues and everything else aside. But bottom line is they wouldn't be up in arms like this, and they wouldn't be screaming Nazi this and that. That's what's we have to fix this sort of craziness where people are just get over it. This is a commercial. Yeah. And the girl's attractive, let her be. Like, calm down. There's nothing wrong with that ad. And the people that think it is, I guess they can disagree with us. That's all. That's fine. And listen, there's all kinds of
beautiful people in every single color. So it's really not about the color.
It isn't.
It really is about having beautiful
unless these extremists make it about that. And
well, in the last few years, it was a lot about the color, but in the wrong way, right?
They wanted to divide everybody up into different categories. So this category was unacceptable, so they're upset about it. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that time has passed. Maybe we need to start thinking again like Martin Luther King Jr. again and say we're not dividing people up by color and by different categories. Just be proud of who you are and move forward.
It's called color blindness. Basically, treat everybody as if color is
No.
not involved because color
For the
shouldn't be
the four past years, that would be considered racist, which
exactly.
is
That's why
bottom
this ad is so refreshing. Yes, for this ad, they had to use somebody white to garner all this attention, but it's not about that. I'm sure they have lots of people of a variety of colors in their ads. As long as they're beautiful people, we're all happy to look at them. If they're ugly people, we don't want to look at them. Stop shoving ugly people in every single poster, please.
Yeah, and to make one last comment,
effect.
you pointed out that a major owner of the brand is Jewish, right? And so do we think that a Jewish family is promoting
Nazism? Of course. That's what Orthodox Jews do every single day.
What? Come on, back off. Stay in your lane. Get out of here. It's so stupid. But it's like people just need something to complain about. And ultimately, look, I think we're so blessed in the West, and certainly in the United States, where people have nothing better to do. You can fabricate things to be upset about. There's other parts in the world where there's ongoing conflicts, issues, and problems. We've been talking about this, how a lot of it's not covered. Last week, we spoke about the plight of the Druze in Syria, and which really wasn't getting much coverage. We did cover it, but there's other places, Thailand, Cambodia, that whole region where Vietnam is. There's been conflict there for a long time, and it's not even most Americans don't even think about it. There's things that happen all over the world. Maybe you want to cover a little bit of that. We can put in a video that kind of prefaces that, and we can touch on that to maybe bring into perspective that some of our little problems over here that are fabricated aren't really as bad as living in some other countries.
Yeah, we're very lucky that our problems involve people wearing jeans or talking about jeans or advertisements and marketing. Basically, it's in Hebrew, there's a saying, it's a rich person's problems, right? You prefer to have a rich person's problems than a poor person's problems. And thankfully, the United States is such a rich society that we have the privilege of having rich people problems when around the world, people have real problems. And sometimes it's important to wake up and just realize how privileged we are and be thankful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let's play that. I did pull it up. We can put things a little more perspective and just see how easy we have it here. Here we go.
Sporadic shelling and gunfire have erupted across 12 locations along the Thai-Cambodian border. The clash began near the disputed Tamontom temple complex, where Thai officials claim to have detected a Cambodian surveillance drone followed by Cambodian troops advancing to set up logistics positions. According to Thailand, after issuing verbal warnings, their forces came under fire, which set off a wider confrontation along the frontier. Cambodian rockets and artillery then struck Thailand's Surin and Sisaket provinces, reportedly hitting civilian homes, a gas station, a hospital, and public roads. In response, the Royal Thai Air Force launched airstrikes with F-16 fighter jets, targeting what they said were 2 Cambodian military positions responsible for the attacks. Thai officials insisted the strikes were precise and proportionate, but Cambodia rejected that claim, accusing Thailand of bombing a public road near a Buddhist shrine and endangering civilians. So far, Thailand and Cambodia have disputed their border for well over a century. At its core are strategic heights and ancient temples claimed by both sides. Key contested areas include Tamontom, Takwai, Chongchom, Chonganma, and Chongbok. But the prime disputed area is the Preah Vihear Temple, a Hindu complex built during the height of the Khmer Empire. Renowned for its vast power and reach, the Khmer Empire left a legacy that continues to shape the region's identity to this day. Both Cambodia and Thailand consider themselves the rightful heirs, making the temple a point of national pride and ongoing contention. Time had passed, and Thailand's claim was considered irrelevant. However, while the International Court awarded the temple to Cambodia, it made no ruling on the land surrounding the complex. And this is a classic example of how legal decisions don't always settle real-world disputes. Here's the thing. The mountain range where the temple sits forms a natural border between Thailand and Cambodia, but the temple itself is perched atop a cliff. The only way to access it is through Thailand's side. So by resolving one dispute, the ruling inadvertently sparked another.
We'll give you the temple, but you can't get to it because it's in the neighboring country.
Or you have to come through our country to go to the temple. Yeah, that's the thing about these.
I just want to point out that was by the Caspian Report. We'll put
Yeah,
the
he's
link.
phenomenal. One of my favorite YouTube channels on geopolitics. He's actually an Azeri from Azerbaijan, and he gives just really balanced reporting, great animations about conflicts all over the world. He's super in depth and yeah, very educational, especially on this conflict. His videos are extremely informative, so I highly recommend watching and subscribing to Caspian Report.
Yeah, we'll put the link down in the comments so that ultimately anyone that has an interest in learning more about the things that typically aren't reported really in the United States, but want to understand a little bit more of what's going on around the world. We're just scratching the surface here, but this is exemplary of things happening all over the world. It's not just there.
Yeah, to be honest, this conflict did catch me by surprise. Obviously, having grown up in the Middle East, I'm very familiar with all the conflicts there. Conflicts of Europe are just a continuation of history, basically. So I'm very familiar with those too. Even the Azerbaijan or Armenia conflict was not surprising at all. But this one between Thailand and Cambodia did catch me by surprise. I wasn't expecting a hot kinetic war over access to a temple, stuff like that. The funny thing is, it seems, I mean, it depends on who you ask. Both sides blame each other, but it seems that the Cambodians did start this war. And that's a little interesting and ironic because Thailand is a country with 3 to 5 times the population, drastically more wealthy. Cambodia is intertwined with basically Chinese gangs and cartels who do a lot of just illegal activity. A lot of scams are operated in Cambodia. The country is a little bit backwards and they're more aligned with China, whereas Thailand is more aligned with the United States, and therefore they have F-16s and pretty advanced weapons. So the fight was very much kind of one-sided. It seems like Cambodia was shooting MLRS systems, which are rockets, into civilian areas in Thailand, and Thailand was using much more advanced technology to use precision munitions to attack the Cambodian side. Listen, it's sad and devastating anytime there's death on either side, but it seems like what it stems from is that the ancient Khmer Empire, and that's not the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia, which is separate, but would also lays claim to the same Khmer Empire. But the Khmer Empire was one of the greatest empires in Southeast Asia, and I think they existed until about 300 or 400 years ago. And both Thailand and Cambodia considered themselves to be ancestors, or consider the Khmer Empire to be their ancestors, and they consider the heritage, and that's why these temples are so critical and important for people on both sides. Cambodia also has a beef with Vietnam because part of the Khmer Empire continued into southern Vietnam, and that's where Ho Chi Minh City is, which is one of the largest cities in Vietnam as well. It seems like they may have initiated it to gain support, so having an external enemy really helps rally the people around the troops, and it really helped the prime minister of Cambodia gain a lot of attention and national fervor in his country. It happened the same in Thailand as well, until the Cambodian prime minister leaked a conversation with the Thai prime minister that really pissed off a huge swath of the Thai people. And Thailand is not a democracy. It's controlled by a military junta. And they basically, I think that they threw the Thai prime minister into house arrest or something. So even though Thailand is a much stronger country, it seems that at least behind the scenes, Cambodia having this card up their sleeves of this recording of the Thai prime minister was smart and tactful. Thankfully, 3 or 4 days ago, there was a ceasefire, and that's obviously very refreshing, and hopefully it stays standing.
Yeah, no, we can only hope. And again, they're not worrying about what type of blue jeans they're wearing over there half the time.
Yeah.
Know?
Yeah. For them, blue jeans is a luxury, period. Any type of blue jeans, mostly the pants, but just in general. If you're trying to survive, you're trying to eat, you're trying to not be bombarded.
Yeah, any region that obviously is under attack or threat of attack or war, that just obviously puts things in a completely different light. And where here it's really easy to throw words around. You're trying to market some jeans, you're a Nazi, and you want to do things in the Middle East. We have a mayoral candidate for arguably one of the most important cities in the country, New York City, and the Democratic representative for mayor of New York, Mamdani, he's, in his own words, let's see what he's saying about really the Middle East. It's not like he has no opinion, right? So it's not like we're immune, and it's not like we don't stir the pot in other countries. So what happens abroad we can play a role in, and sometimes some voices might actually make things worse. Let's see what his own words. Let's see what he says.
Officials who refuse to acknowledge this genocide. When I get to 3, I want you to say ceasefire now. 1, 2, 3. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! I want to ask you one final thing, to join me in a chant. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Eid Mubarak.
So that was him at a Muslim center in Jamaica, New York. Obviously, again, this was, and again, for those that aren't clear, when they were saying ceasefire, what they wanted is, yeah, so we had terrorists essentially go and attack on Israeli soil, but Israel can't defend itself. We don't want any retaliation.
Exactly. On October 7th, they weren't saying ceasefire. They weren't telling Hamas to ceasefire. Even now, they're not telling Hamas ceasefire, release the hostages, give up your arms, and so the war can end. That's not what they're saying. By ceasefire now, it sounds like such a beautiful, peaceful slogan, but in reality, what they're saying is basically just stop the Jews from defending themselves. That's the issue with the whole ceasefire is these people were celebrating on October 7th and October 8th before any bombs landed in Gaza. These people were dancing in the streets. They were dancing in our streets. Go back to Pakistan and dance in Pakistan, right? Why are you coming to America to dance here, right? And these are the same people who were dancing on 9/11. Don't get confused one bit, right? So these people, they hate the West, they hate America, and they hate Israel because Israel represents the West in Dar al-Islam, the hardcore land of Islam is what they will tell you. So if Islam is a religion of conquest, and if they can't conquer the world, it defeats the purpose of the religion. And by Israel being right there in their face, successful, vibrant, multicultural, it's just an affront to them. And that's why they first want to destroy the little Satan, Israel, before they can attack the big Satan, the United States.
So now the conversation has evolved from basically a ceasefire to granting Palestine statehood, which is something that's been, again, circulating around for a long time. Canada has just come forward saying that they're absolutely going to support the notion of a new Palestinian state. And obviously there's all of these half-truths that are floating around. Again, a lot of this marketing sounds great. Everyone, of course, wants no war and everyone wants ceasefires and so forth. But someone gets punched in the nose, they should be entitled to punch back. Let's put up a couple of clips here that perhaps give a different side to the narrative of Palestine being granted some new statehood. Here we go.
The recognition of Palestine by Western powers. Do you understand why this is taking place?
Sir, let me explain something to you. If you are willing to have your daughters 30 meters away from terrorists who have said again and again, very unashamedly, that they will carnage, massacre, rape, and burn them because they are British or Christian or whatever it is that you belong to, and you feel that your government should not do anything at all, plus your government would be giving food to those specific people who wish and claim again that they will ravage, massacre, burn, and rape your daughters, and you feel that this is a normal situation, and you feel that it is correct to give them a state, which they had since 2005. They had independence. And what did they do with that independence? They carnaged their own territory. Now, Canada has the biggest number of Muslim Brotherhood members in the entire globe. I wish them good luck. In fact, sir, I wish you and the British people a lot of luck, because you will, unfortunately, and I pray for you from the bottom of my heart as one mother to the mothers of the United Kingdom, that you will be safe. Because you are being overtaken by extremist Islamist forces.
Hamas chose today to release footage of an emaciated 24-year-old Israeli hostage in a dark tunnel in Gaza being forced to dig his own grave. They did this because they are laughing at you. They are laughing at how they have darvoed the entire world with the Western media issuing its propaganda and doing Hamas's job for Hamas. Hamas have only ever wanted one thing since October 7th. That's why they took the hostages. They want to prolong the war. They want to maximize damage on both sides. And they want to put out into the world a propagandist story that is pure Darvo to blame Israel for all of the suffering in Gaza, even though Hamas has created the infrastructure for all of the suffering in Gaza, including stealing aid from all of the aid trucks, working with the UN to make sure that the aid cannot be facilitated into Gaza, hiding all of their tunnels, their tunnel shafts and hatches and all of their weapon storage in civilian populated areas and buildings such as hospitals and mosques and schools, using their own civilians as human shields, all of this. Hamas are the ones that are maximizing human suffering in Gaza.
And that's the sad truth, right?
Yeah. So there are a few things I want to kind of address. First is 2005. She mentioned that in the video. I was there. It was called Gush Katif, which is where the Jewish settlements were in part of Gaza, because Gaza used to be mixed area with Jews and Arabs. Obviously, the Arabs were attacking Jews, shooting mortars into people's homes, shooting Cornet missiles into school buses filled with kids. They literally blew up a school bus filled with kids, and they had spied and watched it and were aware of the fact that it was a bus filled with kids, right? So the dumb prime minister of Israel at the time, Ariel Sharon, who in a prior life was one of the most brilliant military generals possibly in human history, but as a politician, he just became corrupt and horrible. He decided that the solution is that if there's a clear border, a delineated border, there are no more quote unquote settlements with Jews living in that area. If we can give the people of Gaza their own autonomy, then what they're going to want is peace. And we're going to have Monaco next to us. We're going to have Singapore, right? It's a little Riviera on the ocean. It's beautiful. It could be developed like Trump wants to do almost, and into this beautiful, peaceful place, right? So the idea was, if we uproot every single Jew who lives in Gaza and we make it Judenrein, which means Jew clean, we clean all the Jews out. We'll even uproot every single dead body from the Jewish cemeteries there. And by the way, Jews have a history of living in Gaza for thousands of years. So this is not some weird thing. There's been a continuous Jewish community in Gaza for thousands of years. So Israel, its own soldiers, were forced to go in there and uproot every single Jew who lived there, forcefully evacuating them. And the people didn't want to leave. The people were like, these are beautiful homes, beautiful communities. We love living here. We have Arab neighbors that we sometimes get along with when they don't try to kill us. But like, why are you kicking us out of our own land? And under Ariel Sharon, the Israeli army did exactly that by force. They forced everybody out of there. And the whole world hailed Ariel Sharon as this amazing peacemaker. Wow, this is such a brave thing to do. And to me, even though I was a teenager at the time, and to many other Israelis and sane people around the world, it was like, wait, this is absurd. You are giving a prize to terror for terrorizing you, right? Because in the one-sum game of Islamism, if they attack and then you give in, they don't see it as concession, as a peaceful concession. All they see it is that they're winning, they're victorious, and it's one step closer to evacuating you, to killing you, to getting you out of the area. And like we said, it's not just about Israel. They want to forcefully convert all Christians and all non-believers into Islam, right? The concept of Palestine as an independent state. So first of all, the name Palestine is very interesting. It comes from the Romans, who, trying to distance the Jews from their land, decided to rename it and call it Palestine. Then Palestine was part of various empires, concluding with the Ottoman Empire. It didn't have any name for thousands of years. And then when the British decided to retake control, they decided to give it, again, the name Palestine. And if you look at any of the coins or newspapers or stuff like that from the British Mandate period, anytime it said Palestine, they were mostly referring to the Jews of Palestine. They used to call the Arabs, they're just Arabs, right? Or Middle Eastern Arabs, or Sham Arabs, etc. But they weren't considered, there was no independent state ever. So that name is false. It was a name that traditionally referenced the Jewish land. But again, I've got no issue with Palestinians having a statehood. I think that's phenomenal. For years, I was for that until I discovered that when Palestinians want a state, they want a state with no Jews. They claim that they want an independent state is, and they'll tell you this to your face, is that they want to destroy the Jewish state. And even when Yasser Arafat agreed to the two-state solution, he basically said one state would be Palestine, and that state will not have a single Jew in it. Okay, that's not surprising. The second state, he didn't even say what it is. He didn't say he would recognize Israel. Instead, it would be a democratic state with the right of return. So unlike war, what's it called? When somebody runs away from war.
You're using refugees.
Refugees, thank you. So unlike refugees from everywhere else around the world, the Palestinian refugees are very unique because instead of being a refugee for 2 or 3 years until they're resettled like every other refugee, they have this special organization called UNRWA that gets more funding than all other refugees do all over for the entire world combined, and has been perpetuating this narrative for decades that Palestinians are refugees forever. And even if they've settled in Jordan, which is the original Palestine or Palestinian land, even if they settled in Syria or anywhere else, they will forever be Palestinians because the objective is to annihilate the Jewish people and put the Palestinians back there. And obviously that's why there were 7 wars. All the Arab countries around Israel tried to annihilate Israel time and time again. This perpetual refugee situation is for one purpose and one purpose only, and that's the right of return. And that's basically to have the international community force Israel to accept in tens of millions of Palestinians. They're like, wait, only 500 to 800,000 people were evacuated in 1948. Those were the original refugees. Most of those died. How is Israel, like, where are 15 million people coming from? And that's because only UNRWA gave all Palestinians for all future generations the endless perpetual refugee status. So therefore, the right of return means 15 million people who were never born there, never lived there, never returned there, who were never kicked out to return and then turn Israel into an Islamist country because it's a democratic country with now a majority of another 15 million Muslims in addition to the 2.5 million Muslims that already live in Israel peacefully. So they don't say we want a two-state solution. They say we want a Palestine with no Jews, and then we want another state that's majority Muslim where the Muslims will rule because of democracy and then turn Jews into second-class citizens like Islam requires. So the entire concept of Palestine is not to build a new state, it is to destroy another state. And that's the problem. If they had one constructive bone in their body, they would have turned Gaza into the beautiful country that it has the potential of being. And Mahmoud Abbas would have turned the West Bank into the beautiful country it has the potential of being. But instead of that, they're focused on one thing only, and that is to destroy Israel and to kill Jews. I highly recommend people watch Einat Wilf, WILF. She is brilliant. She's done extremely in-depth research on the topic. She was a hardcore leftist for many years. She was a hardcore peace person. And until she realized that basically not a single Palestinian ever has publicly said, aside from 3, that they recognize Israel and they recognize the right for Israel to exist. And that's the thing. I'm all for Palestine as long as they're willing to say, we let Israel exist as a Jewish country next to England is a Christian country. There are 23 Muslim countries, so Jews have the right to at least have one tiny little country where they're not prosecuted, because what we've been seeing all over the world is that Jews are prosecuted. And then one thing to President Macron and Mark Carney of Canada and two-tier Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom, they are giving a prize to Hamas. The reason Hamas committed the atrocities of October 7th was in order to force the Jews out of the land. And the way that they're doing it, Hamas has been doing it through violence. The Palestinian Authority has been doing it through the claims of statehood, right? So by recognizing the claims of statehood of Palestine, quote unquote, what they're doing is they're giving a prize to Hamas. They said that unless Israel agrees to ceasefire, then they're going to do this. The problem is Israel has agreed to the last 5 ceasefires. It's Hamas who's been declining these ceasefires, but they never criticize Hamas. And on that, I just want to touch on one last point, and that's the Red Cross, not to mention UNRWA, the UN agency in task of educating the Palestinian people, has instead indoctrinated them into terror. Almost every single UNRWA teacher is a local Gazan who works with or has family members in Hamas, took part in October 7th. There were teachers held hostages in their homes. And I highly recommend people listen to the GHF. That's the new Gaza Humanitarian Fund. That's the American organization feeding people in Gaza. And he's been doing some interviews, and he explains brilliantly the difference between what they're doing and what the UN, especially UNRWA, has been doing, which is trying to keep the conflict going. One last note about the Red Cross. They haven't once requested from Qatar or Egypt or Hamas to see the hostages, to treat the hostages. They don't care about the hostages. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, and we've covered this in prior episodes, UNRWA, and kind of the crookedness and the enabling that it has created in the region in a negative way. I think the important thing for folks certainly listening here in the United States is to understand, because this is halfway across the world, it's how does it really affect everyone here? And it does, because the United States isn't immune from these same problems. And like our neighbors to the north, as was pointed out in that clip, have the largest contingency in the world of Muslim Brotherhood, which is not a social organization that
Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
Right.
It's not an organization that's just meeting for tea and crumpets. Okay. There are real things happening. Just this week, there was reporting of an ISIS fighter, basically on U.S. soil, which had improvised explosives. We put that clip up to just put things in perspective for how this isn't halfway around the world. This is here as well. Might get worse. Might get much worse.
In Southern California, the feds were moving in to arrest a man on charges of supporting the terror group ISIS when they found what appears to be a homemade bomb in his home in Long Beach. Marianne Rafferty, live in Los Angeles with more on that story. Marianne.
Yeah, good afternoon, John. A shocking discovery as federal investigators were arresting a suspected ISIS operative, a homemade explosive device found inside his Long Beach, California home. According to federal authorities, the bomb was found during the arrest of a man accused of sending 12 electronic payments to ISIS and traveling overseas to fight for the terrorist group. FBI investigators say the suspect, Mark Lorenzo Villanueva, is charged with providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization. Villanueva is also accused of posting anti-America messages online, including an especially chilling one, "Honor to fight and die for our faith." Former acting ICE Director Jonathan Fahey telling Fox News, with 4 years of open borders before President Trump took office, federal agents are on the lookout for incidents like this one.
We know we had millions and millions of people not knowing what their motivations were, if they were here to harm us, how they were here to harm us, and they're all here and could harm us right now.
Now, the complaint against Villanueva includes an exchange with another ISIS fighter, which reads in part, Villanueva says, "My dear brother, are you a supporter of the Islamic State?" The unidentified suspect says, "Yes, I was an ISIS fighter. I was captured at 17 and released at the age of 30. Federal agents say their investigation unveiled social media messages and communications records, which all led to this arrest. And we'll be following this developing story and bring you any new details as we receive them.
That's crazy stuff, right?
Yeah, it's very crazy. Noteworthy is that he had the bomb in his home. He didn't find a warehouse outside of a neighborhood filled with people. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if this person had a wife and kids living in the home. Who cares if he's building a bomb in the garage? It is par for the course, right? That's what we see is when Israel, the reason why so much of Gaza is destroyed in terms of buildings are devastated and collapsed is because Hamas has booby-trapped basically every single, or at least every other building, every other apartment, every other room, every other house in Gaza, right? So basically right out of that playbook, you build a bomb in your home. Who cares if your own wife and kids live there? Who cares? In the worst case scenario, they will service in the phenomenal name of jihad and be an honor and respect for all Muslims around the world, unfortunately. So that's really the issue here, is that even if you kill your own wife and your own children, there have been cases of terrorists literally hiding behind their own wife and daughters and shooting at Israeli soldiers, right? And it's like, the Israeli soldiers are like trying to take him out, but he's hiding behind his own wife and children. He doesn't care if maybe he's going to shoot them because she's going to go to heaven and maybe get her 72 virgins too. I don't know if that's just for men, or not. But yeah, at the end, the name sounds like a Mexican name. But at the end, he says, in the name of our faith, and that presumably is the faith of Islam. So unfortunately, radicalism exists here in the United States as well, and radicalism has taken over the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister himself is involved with the grooming gangs, where they're basically raping white young girls by these quote-unquote immigrants, almost all being Muslim immigrants, because in Islam, rape of infidels is something that's allowed, at least during a time of war, etc. So the moment he said, I'm doing this for our faith, it becomes very obvious. And it's very scary that here in the United States we have people like this. That's why closing the border is so important, and kicking out people who don't align with American culture is a big problem. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've been talking about that for several episodes. Ultimately, we know there's this undercurrent of extremism that exists, and we know that there's some 20 million people that were let into the country in the last 4 years. And what percentage of those people align with this guy who has a bomb in his house? And remember, it's not just him. You live next door to someone like this. If your neighbor is building bombs, what happens? That thing goes off. These are just realities. We have to still live our lives, but we have to understand that when we include topics that are oceans away, other side of the world, it's important to at least keep tabs on what's happening and to hear the narratives that are being said. They make more sense if you understand some of the intricacies and specifics. Just listen. It's like the Ukraine and Russia. There's been some crazy talk out of Russia this past week, which is probably
not just Medvedev has been threatening to use nukes for 2 years.
But this past week, there's been some, let's just say, some pretty provocative things being said.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Let's pull up a story. This one will give us a footing on the latest.
US President Donald Trump has responded to threats from a former Russian leader. The president has ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be moved closer to Russia after what he called foolish and inflammatory threats made by Dmitry Medvedev.
What did Medvedev say to you that made you really mad?
You just have to read what he said. Talking about nuclear. When you talk about nuclear, we have to be prepared, and we're totally prepared.
This week, Russia continued its campaign of strikes against Ukraine despite Donald Trump's call for a ceasefire to be agreed to by the end of next week.
Mourning in Kyiv and fury in Washington. The latest Russian airstrikes on the Ukrainian capital killed 31 people, including 5 children. That's the highest number of children killed since the aerial bombardment began nearly 3 years ago. On Monday, Donald Trump gave Russia 10 days to agree a ceasefire or face sanctions.
I think it's disgusting what they're doing. I think it's disgusting. This is Biden's war. It's not my war. But I said if I get in, I'll try and get the thing stopped.
But former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev accused the US president of engaging in a game of ultimatums and reminded him that Russia possesses Soviet-era nuclear strike capabilities of last resort, prompting the deployment of US submarines near Russia, Trump accusing him of issuing highly provocative statements. In a statement on Truth Social, he said, "I have ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions, just in case these foolish and inflammatory statements are more than just that." Words are very important and can often lead to unintended consequences. I hope this will not be one of those instances. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's been meeting his Belarusian counterpart and ally Alexander Lukashenko, is playing down hopes of any breakthrough soon.
As for any disappointments from anyone, all disappointments arise from excessive expectations. This is a well-known general rule. It's necessary to conduct thorough talks to reach a peaceful settlement, and it should be done calmly during the negotiation process and not in public.
This is a high-stakes signal of strength. Strategically, it's classic Trump. Bold, headline-grabbing and intended to project dominance. But it's also risky, escalating tensions with Russia during an already volatile phase of the war. The US president is betting on brinkmanship to end the attacks, but Moscow wants peace on its terms, not on Donald Trump's.
And that's a pretty well-rounded reporting.
Yeah, I've found that Sky News in the UK are completely radicals. Sky News in Australia are just phenomenal. So yeah, Sky News Australia is just definitely highly recommend giving them a watch. It seems like for a very long time, Trump was, I don't want to say ignorant, but very hopeful about Putin in the situation there, because they did have a great relationship last time. And I think them having a good relationship is a good thing, not a bad thing, like it was painted out to be. But he did have a good relationship with him during his previous administration, Trump's previous administration. And he was hopeful that using those personal connections and assuming that Putin is a rational actor, that he can pressure Putin into agreeing to a ceasefire. And I'm all for the hopes and for any attempt for a ceasefire, especially in a war where it's almost World War I style trench warfare, although now it's mostly done with drones, and that evolution has been phenomenal. And we've discussed in the past, and we will discuss more in the future in terms of military technology. But we saw when Zelensky came to the White House, obviously he wasn't dressed well, etc., and there were some disrespectful things going on there. Regardless, there was nonstop pressure on Ukraine to agree and agree and agree. And what Zelensky was trying to tell Trump is, we've already agreed, we already signed a ceasefire with Putin. They did in the past, and Putin violated it. It's like, even if we sign another one, how do we know that Putin won't violate it? Because Trump was trying to pressure him to accept the ceasefire without sufficient guarantees, at least according to Ukraine. And finally, after Trump gave Putin 2 weeks, again, for over 2 months, and then Trump gave Putin another 50 days, and now Trump is giving Putin another 10 days, it seems like Trump is really being fed up with Putin. He's starting to realize that Putin, A, doesn't want peace, and B, may not be the rational actor he thought he was. Zelensky agreed to basically every peace initiative that Trump had, again and again, 5 different ones. And every time the Russians come to the table, they say, hey, Ukraine agreed, you agreed, let's get this signed. And the Russians are like, oh, now we have new demands. And Trump is basically getting fed up. And what he's doing with these submarines is power projection. Remember, submarines are stealth, they're silent, they're secret. He could have positioned them there without telling anybody. They're probably positioned there most of the time anyways, without the world realizing. The idea is the power projection, because like I mentioned earlier, Medvedev, who is the former president and kind of prime minister of Russia, he has been threatening to use nukes on America time and time again for the last 3 or 4 years now, basically, especially since the war began. And finally, we're shutting him up with actions, not with words. And like Trump said, he better be careful with the words he uses. Another thing that Trump did that is really going to hit Russia where it hurts is with India. And you're like, India, how is that related? India is one of the largest purchasers of Russian oil, and Trump just dropped on them 25% tariffs and additional sanctions because they're buying Russian oil. And what we've seen is that the Indian refineries have now stopped purchasing over the last 24 hours. They've stopped purchasing Russian oil because as long as Russia makes money from selling oil, even if it's at a reduced price because they have to sell it at a discount to India and China, as opposed to at a premium to Europe, like they were actually until recently, once we get rid of it completely, so if we can pressure India and China to stop buying Russian oil, then the Russian war machine grinds to a halt because they run out of money. They may have reserves for a while, but once that runs out, they're really running out. So that's why we're seeing real pressure on Russia finally now. So the submarines is one thing, but the true pressure, I think, really is what we've seen with India. And there's a threat for escalation. You can't not do anything because the other side may escalate. That's really not a solution. Like, you have to stand strong. And if they escalate, sometimes you have to be ready to hit back twice as hard. What are your thoughts on the whole kind of, we have to back down because the other side may escalate?
So it's threading the needle. You don't want to be too crazy because the problem is the people you're dealing with may not be of sound mind. I'm not convinced that Putin is thinking the same way we do. So we can't assume he's going to use the same rational thought pattern that we do. And he has his own objectives. So that's one of the big question marks in battle and war. It's not a game with rules that everyone's playing by, the same rules. That being said, you can't just roll over. You have to show some amount of dominance, some amount of power. And that's one of the things we've seen over and over again, is that if the United States, example, over the last 4 years, draws a red line, does nothing, says something, does nothing, and just rolls over on its back like a puppy dog waiting to be scratched, that doesn't move the needle. Whereas if there's some concern that the United States can cause some pain, the adversary might recalculate kind of their path forward. So there's a reason why Trump mentioned publicly that he's moving nuclear military assets around. It's not, like you said, he doesn't have to say anything. He's saying it because the comments themselves have weight and value, and the world is watching. And we need to just understand that there's a lot of different types of pressures, not just political pressure, but there's pressure basically on Moscow also to just people there. I think that people are fed up with battle. They don't want to have their families being sent off to war to go fight in. And I've talked to people that are here, both Ukrainians and Russians, and it's interesting. You're saying half and half, and that's the story. Some people view it the way most Westerners view it, and some people view things differently. But bottom line is, if there's no outside pressures, if there's no warnings of any kind, then it's a problem. So we have to at least do, I think we're going down the right path, but it's fraught with danger. We'll see what happens. And listen, military, anything has risks, right? So I think we're doing what needs to be done.
So in terms of kind of the Russians, most of the Russians who are against the war tried to leave or left over the last few years. So a lot of the Russians left in Russia are pro the war. But Putin has been very smart, and he knows that the Russian populace, first of all, they're very nationalistic, and the majority of them are in support of the war and in support of Putin himself personally. Yeah. Regarding the people who are outside of the country, most of them are against the war. The majority of the people in the country support the war because Putin has been smart and has been sending people from far rural regions to die in the war. Most of the elite in Moscow and St. Petersburg have been staying safe. The more they feel unsafe, that's when shifts may turn. So that's really what we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, thank God for the military. We definitely need to have what we have in place, and we need to keep it strong and be prepared. That being said, let's maybe shift gears and take a kind of a more positive look at where the military's at. And this is the U.S. Air Force. This is a channel called 0 Hour Archive. They do tons of military videos. And this is just a preface of the couple of things we're going to touch upon regarding some pretty cool aviation related news of the week. So let's start off with this as an introduction.
Sound of silence, and in the naked light I saw 10,000 people leaving, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never share, and no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fools said, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Play my arms that I might reach you. But my words.
Our Air Force is badass, and bottom line is, it's
really
not times of war that they have value. They're there ready for the call at any time. And I think we sometimes forget about the human side of it. That's really the purpose of that clip, is to maybe feel a little bit of humanity with regards to the people who are serving and who have served. And
watching them do their job and dancing at the same time is just pure bliss. It's beautiful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there was, in Spain this past week, there was an air show, which during these air shows, you have military aircraft showing off and doing their thing. And sometimes it takes an unexpected twist to just see really how good these pilots are. This is a short clip, went viral. It's from just a few days ago. And what it was is, as the fighter jet was coming, and this is the Spanish Air Force, it was an EF-18 Hornet that was doing a demonstration, and then it saw that it was being intercepted by a flock of birds, which, for those that may not know, birds being sucked into the engines are not a good thing. You could lose, especially at very low altitudes. This plane was very low to the ground, doing its various stunts. If it had sucked up a bunch of birds, who knows what would have happened. And there's all these people obviously not far away that are watching it. So they pull an evasive maneuver, which I think made for the air show being better than it would otherwise been. Definitely a clip worth watching. Let's take a look.
Capitán Botana.
Comes? Did it come?
Wah, wah.
Oi, 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 oi.
Capitán Botana.
One more time.
Wah, wah.
Oi, 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 oi.
A lot of G's right there,
So they got a better show. They got to thank the birds over there in Spain for having a greater than expected air show. Again, it just, when you're flying,
Marvelous machinery.
you
said
never
that
know what's
the
going to happen.
F-18, I think anybody who's heading around Florida, go to Pensacola. They have the Blue Angels. They practice there, and you can actually go onto their base and stand right by the airfield, right by the runway, and watch them practice. It is just phenomenal. So highly recommended.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And listen, it's like I said, it's not just during war that we could sometimes appreciate just the skill and the dedication. We had another clip that went viral as well. This was the Hellenic Air Force, which is from Greece. They actually conducted a rescue mission off of a cruise ship where someone fell very ill, and the ship was, I believe, full steam back to port, and it was believed that the patient wouldn't make it. So this was a Disney fantasy cruise, and the Greek Air Force, Hellenic Air Force, dispatched a helicopter. And here, take a look. This is pretty badass too. Apparently the patient was having a stroke.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So
time
the
is critical.
Time is of the essence in getting the patient proper therapy. Yep, pretty crazy,
Shout out
right?
to the Greek Air Force. Yeah, a huge respect for the Greek people and the Greek Air Force. A lot of people would say, why would a peaceful, beautiful country like Greece even need an Air Force? And the truth is that Greece and Turkey are neighbors, but they are not friends. The Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, with his kind of neo-Ottoman ambitions, wants to conquer a lot of Greek islands and take them over, just like he did conquer a third of Cyprus. People don't realize, don't talk about it, but a third of Cyprus is still occupied by Turkey. And he's been threatening to conquer huge swaths of Greece as well. He's been trying to make a quarter with Libya to take over like half of the Mediterranean. So even though Turkey is still a NATO member, definitely have to keep your eyes out and open, because they do have a very strong military. And the Greek people are right there. They're their neighbors, and they're being very regularly threatened by Turkey. So yeah, shout out to the Greek Air Force and the Greek people.
Absolutely. And again, it just puts things in perspective, right? And listen, medical emergencies can happen at any time, and we rely on medical professionals, which I was one for many years, and you were one for a number of years as well. And we did our best to do the right thing for our patients. And unfortunately, that isn't always an easy job. Perhaps to segue into more of a health-related discussion, over the last few years, being a doctor has perhaps become quite difficult at times. Luckily, it seems to be getting better, but I think this might help understand why sometimes it's still hard. Just take a look.
A scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being Nazi, not. My name is Dr. Nick Peterson, and I specialize in those suffering from TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. Hello, I'm Dr. Peterson. How are you? Donald Trump is a felon. Nope. I asked how you were doing. The majority of Americans can mentally handle election results on both sides of the aisle. However, there's this small, albeit growing, group of, I don't want to say Americans, but people that are just disconnected from reality. Fascist. And honestly, it makes diagnosing these people a whole lot easier. I just check their social media. Gone are the days when you just search your symptoms on WebMD at home by yourself. Now they record their symptoms and post them for the world to see. The haircut is also a dead giveaway. So, what brings you in today? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's the orange democracy destroying Putin loving dictator. All right, so mental illness. They are completely blind to the fact that their absurd actions and ideologies were a big factor in their party's loss. Let me ask you this. Do you even know what democracy is? Follow-up question. Do you know how Kamala Harris became the nominee? I know you're a deplorable Nazi fascist bigot. Okay, neat. Turns out that calling half the country Nazis for 4 years was not a winning strategy. And yet somehow, not even Cardi B could save him. Do you realize what I'm going through? Yep, delusions. I am losing my right to vote. What? Where are you getting your information? Whoopi Goldberg? What's the remedy, you might be wondering? If you ask me, it's a history lesson in Jesus, but the pharmacy doesn't offer those. I prescribe them a brain, and I send them to tryabrain.com for more information. I'll show you. I'm moving to Canada. That'd be great. And I'll be shaving my head. Oh, that's... And one last thing. I'm going on a sex strike. Your loss.
And that is a real website, tryabrain.com. You can actually go to the website, and he's got other stuff like that.
Very funny.
And I thought it would pull together much of what we were talking about. It talks about Putin.
Yep.
It talks about Donald Trump. It talks about wokeism.
Yep.
Talks about a whole bunch of things. But it's really, again, because we've always felt that some amount of humor, hopefully you can find humor in that, is always a kind of a good way to advance a conversation. The next topic, which is really our health-related topic, which is not as pleasant, could have probably used a little dose of some amusement, which is why we put that first. You know what I'm referring to as far as a mind-boggling healthcare topic that's been in the news.
Yeah, it's actually pretty scary. I'm a registered organ donor, proudly so, until pretty recently, because if I die and there's no more use for my body, why not save other humans with it? I think there's nothing more noble. I don't know, nothing more noble, but at least it's a fairly noble act, right? Why not, right? You may as well. Some people don't want to do it because they believe the sanctity of the body and sanctity of, for religious purposes, basically. But if that doesn't bother you, you may as well donate your organs if you die, being key.
My father was a transplant recipient. When I was growing up, my dad had multiple transplants, and I understand the importance of it. And having worked in cardiothoracic surgery, working on teams that were involved in transplantation and so forth, I can tell you it should be something without question. And unfortunately, in the news lately, there's been a lot of light that's come to shine on some practices that are, to say they're questionable is not strong enough. Let's start with this.
Criminal would be more.
Just look, really, there's nothing else that when you go to the DMV to get your license renewed, they don't ask you pretty much anything else. But they do in many states, you basically have to opt out of organ donation. You're pretty much just donating your organs unless you say otherwise. And it seems noble enough. But it's like a guaranteed sort of thing you're signing up for. And the question is, do you really understand what you're signing up for? And the hope is we can fix the problems so that everyone can continue to be an organ donor, because there's nowhere near enough organs. People are dying on waiting lists. But this is unacceptable as well. Let's play this story.
170 million Americans are registered organ donors. Well, this morning, some in Congress say the public trust in the donation system is eroded after reports that dozens of supposedly dead donors actually showed signs of life. And now reform is on the table. News Nation Weekend anchor Anna Koyman joins us now. Anna, this elicits some really disturbing visuals. What in the world is going on here, and how big of a problem is this?
Yeah, a lot of people looking at their licenses going, am I an organ donor? Let me double check here. The United States organ transplant system really looks to be in need of an overhaul. This comes after multiple accounts of close calls where patients' organs were almost harvested accidentally while they were still alive. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill Tuesday talking about results of a federal investigation and what they say is a need to protect people who plan to donate their organs. But Of course, we all want to be fully dead first. That Health Resources and Services Administration's investigation was initiated last year after a 2021 case in Kentucky where a man was believed to be brain dead from an overdose, but doctors were wrong and surgery was called off just moments before he was taken off life support. A physician noticed the man moving and moaning while being taken to an operating room. The man did survive all of this. And now Health and Human Services is announcing they want to improve the organ transplant system. Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying the organ procurement organizations that coordinate access to transplants will be held accountable. The entire system must be fixed to ensure that every potential donor's life is treated with the sanctity it deserves. The HRSA investigation finding there were more than 350 cases where organ donations were approved but then canceled, sometimes at the last minute. And they all got a closer look. Nearly a third were of concern. That's including 73 cases where the doctors signed off for organ retrieval, but the patient wasn't fully dead.
When I was in anesthesiology residency training, they asked me to go up to ICU and bring down a brain dead man to become an organ donor. I hadn't really thought about that very much. And so I asked him, gee, brain death, is there anything I need to know about this? It's my first time doing this. And my staff man just rolled his eyes and said, just be sure someone has actually declared him brain dead. You know how eager the transplant team can be. I went up there and I found my patient and he didn't look dead. His heart was beating. He had a good blood pressure, good heart rate. His oxygen saturation was great. He looked just like every other ICU patient I'd taken care of, and in fact, better than most. And in my gut, I knew something was wrong, but I had been taught by my authorities that this man was dead. So I came back to the operating room and I found the staff anesthesiologist who was going to be supervising me, and I presented the case to him. And he asked me for my anesthetic plan of care. And I said, I think I'll use a paralyzing agent because surgeons get when people move during surgery, and I'll give him some fentanyl to blunt any heart rate or blood pressure swings that might damage his organs. And the doctor looked at me and he said, are you going to give him anything to block consciousness? I was stunned. I said, why would I do that? Isn't he dead? And he just gave me this long, slow look over his surgical mask and he said, why don't you give one just in case? And he walked away. Now, Brandon, my gut was telling me this is wrong. Something is really going on wrong here. May God forgive me. I caved to my authorities and the push that everyone was taking to take this man and get this case done. And I did what I was told. I took the man to the operating room. I gave him the anesthesia we had planned to do. And I'm here to tell you, he reacted to the incisions, to the bone saws, to the removal of pieces of him, just like any other patient. He required the same types and the same amounts of anesthesia.
These are the
And
texts
later I
that
told
were
this-
exchanged during what was supposed to be a typical organ donation in West Virginia. Then one clinician alerts the others there has been a change in the patient's status. The patient is alert and oriented, and the other clinicians respond. We are proceeding. Ultimately, the team did stop. But from my reporting, I learned that's not always the case. We have been investigating something called donation after circulatory death. Most donated organs come from people who are brain dead. They might be on machines, but that is only to keep their organs viable. Donation after circulatory death is when a patient is on life support, usually in a coma, and their doctor has determined that they have no chance of recovering, and their family has authorized the withdrawal of life support. The Times identified 12 instances in 9 different states of patients enduring premature or bungled attempts to retrieve their organs. In Florida in 2022.
So maybe to give a little bit of background. So there's traditionally you would think that the patients that are having their organs harvested are brain dead. So in other words, there's no electrical activity left. The heart's still beating. So because the heart's beating and circulating the blood and it's being oxygenated, you're on a ventilator that's helping you breathe, the other organs stay alive. And it's basically a dead end because the person has no brain left. The brain's not functioning. That's pretty straightforward. Most people would agree, and that's when the family is asked, hey, do you consent? Is it okay? Most people are like, Yeah, if there's zero chance of them regaining any normal brain
Has there
function.
been any cases of brain dead people coming back alive?
I would say yes, but as a general rule, it's once there's no activity, it's
Do they only do it if there's no activity, or do they declare
Yeah.
brain
There's
dead
no-
if it's 5% activity or 10% or 15%?
So it's not so much percent, it's the type of electrical activity. And if there's nothing that shows, there's always, there's still brain function that's happening that's just life supporting. That's one thing. But if the person can't think, if the person can never speak, if the person has no higher level functioning that you can see because the brain waves aren't there, the question is, what are you going to do? Keep this person on life support for the next 10 years? For what purpose? So generally, most people, and even the patients themselves, if you ask me, I wouldn't want to be in that vegetative state lying there endlessly. So most people would have an easy time agreeing to that. What they were referring to, though, are where there is brain activity and there's some circulatory system problem. So when you say someone is dead, there's a couple of main definitions. One, if your heart stops, you could say you're dead, but you could typically restart the heart. CPR, you can go and you can shock the heart electrically, you give medications, so you might be able to restart the heart so the person isn't dead anymore. When we did open heart surgery, we would typically stop the heart and use a heart-lung machine to keep the patients alive during surgery. So their heart was stopped, but they weren't dead because they had something taking over the functions of their heart, for example, or even their lungs. But imagine a situation, and we had patients like this, where the patient goes in for heart surgery, they're not a candidate for transplantation, they just had a massive heart attack, their only chance was to try to do an emergency bypass or whatever the situation was. You get them through surgery, and their heart isn't beating strong enough, and yet for other reasons, maybe because of other serious medical conditions, they would never qualify for a transplant. So there's no other option. And you have a patient now that's still alive, is on life support, is maybe on a heart-lung machine or some other device that's basically keeping them alive because their heart's not beating strong enough and their brain's functioning. What do you do? And I recall a patient where we actually waited and we kept the patient alive because the family was coming in from out of state, and he had begged us before, no matter what, I want to say, make sure my family gets a chance to say goodbye to me if I don't make it. And we honored that request. And the patient was kept alive until their family came in, basically said goodbye to him. And then I had a direct conversation with the patient about this, and basically we turned the patient off. And once we turned the patient off, the patient no longer had circulation and basically died. And so there's all these gray areas most people don't think about, right? And what they're referring to is there's situations that are tragic, something happened, the person's not brain dead. So when you ask the anesthesia team, what are they doing? They have to get full anesthesia. They have to paralyze the person so they don't move when they're getting pain inflicted upon them as they're cutting into them. They have to make sure the patient's not conscious, so they're not aware of this or feeling this. But there are times where it is the logical thing to do. The person really won't be able to survive, but you have to make sure you're doing this properly. There are stories that I've heard over the years where patients they can't move. They've been given paralytic agents, they cannot move, but a tear's coming out of their eye because they're hearing everything that's being said. Okay. These are things that have to be properly addressed. And the fear always when it comes to healthcare, unfortunately, is it can't be primarily a money-driven business. We can't, yes, there's a shortage of organs, and yes, there's people waiting for organs.
And that's why it's all organ donation. You're not allowed to sell organs, et cetera, but still.
But there are decisions that clearly have been made that are questionable, and this has to be fixed. And it does appear that, thank God, our federal government is being very forceful with regards to this to restore faith in our organ transplant system. And this is just one example. This hit the news. There are other things that happen in healthcare. Doctors are not gods. Doctors are human, and there's some that do the right thing and some that do things that are questionable. Nurses, technicians, whatever. So bottom line is we have to always try to point everybody in the right direction to do the right thing.
I think the challenge with organ donation, though, is that organs don't remain viable for a very long time. So if somebody actually is like dead, their organs don't last very long where they're still savable to be used with somebody else. And that's why timing is so critical. And it created this entire industry of like organ donation groups that try and get the organs as quickly as possible. And their ambition, and especially if they're being rewarded for that ambition, can cause them to try and motivate the doctors to declare somebody dead before they are. But a third of the cases, that's just unbelievable. That's just scary.
That's the thing. We have to make sure that there's confidence restored. I remember working as a paramedic and transporting organs while the teams were waiting for the organs. Patient. The way this typically works is, let's say a heart transplant, the patient is prepped and ready to have their heart removed, excised, while the other organs coming in and check for viability and so forth. So a lot of things are happening behind the scenes. So there are situations where it is very time critical. There are other times where the patient may just not be viable to survive on their own, but they have good circulation, their organs are still okay, and it buys more time. So every situation is a little different. All we are saying is clearly it has to be done in an ethical, professional way, and that if you are the patient lying there, that it's your wishes that are being honored. That's what's in question, I think, right now. And there's other crazy cases we hear, but just to shed light on the fact that perhaps unethical things happen and decisions are made that aren't always in the patient's best interest. When we put up this other story you may have not heard about, this has to do with someone who lost her life during a very routine procedure because the doctors in the procedure itself were distracted playing musical bingo. They were playing a game. And in order to focus on the game they were playing, they turned off the alarms from the equipment that was monitoring the patient's status.
That's unbelievable.
Listen to this.
The officer with the body camera knows this emergency won't require much from him.
This way.
The job of trying to save a man's life is already well underway.
Straight ahead.
And so he's here mostly to observe and ask questions.
What kind of surgery?
Questions in need of a few more answers.
He was already sedated. Anesthesiologist has all the information.
Okay. It is a surgery so common, nearly 4 million will be performed in the U.S. this year alone. A surgery so routine.
We weren't thinking there was a whole lot of risk.
The man's wife was told no need to stay.
They said I needed to go, I could do an errand, or I could do whatever, and they would call me when he was done.
Chris Ryder never assumed the surgeon would be the one to make that call.
He said, "This is Stark Johnson, where are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just right across the street." And he's, okay, he goes, "I'm gonna meet you in the parking lot."
And when she got there,
he said, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Would you like to pray with me?" And I was like, "What?"
That's her on the opposite end of the officer's body camera, still struggling to understand why her husband's heart was no longer beating.
We had just talked about what we were going to do for dinner that night, and Bart said, "Let's see how I feel."
Bart Ryder, her husband of 23 years.
We met at the Mercury Cafe. He just never met anyone that he didn't like and that didn't like him. It's just, that's who he was.
Notes obtained by 9 News Investigate suggest Insight Surgery Center staff noticed abnormal vital signs 11 minutes into the cataract surgery. By the time Bart Ryder arrived at Skyridge Medical Center, a mile and a half away, his death was all but ensured. An autopsy blamed cardiac arrest.
It just didn't make sense. Bart was 56. We skied every weekend. We biked together, we hiked together.
One by one, those who staffed the surgical center's OR that day drew these pictures, documenting who was where when things went wrong. A horrible accident, investigators concluded. Chris Ryder reluctantly concluded the same. That is, until she got a call from a doctor not present in the room.
And he goes, "I'm telling you this because I think that's a major distraction."
That doctor's tip outlined a story so absurd, thought Chris.
I was like, what? Like,
she didn't know what to think.
My name is Carl Stark Johnson.
And so she hired a team of lawyers to take depositions of the surgeon, Dr. Stark Johnson.
Michael Urban.
And the anesthesiologist, Dr. Michael Urban, who then asked both if the tip was true.
Were you playing music bingo during Bart Ryder's February 3rd, 2023 cataract surgery?
Yes.
That's right.
I want to talk to you about the music bingo game.
A game they played routinely during these routine surgeries.
I'm sorry,
Lorraine, the music what?
Bingo game.
Oh, thank you.
The team inside the surgery center's OR would listen as songs played on Dr. Urban's cell phone.
I understand that you would keep score.
I would usually, but not always, keep score. We continually listen to the radio and we categorize the songs.
Mostly 70s and 80s bands and musicians, they said.
So as an example, if the 70s group Bee Gees were to sing a song, that would be a letter B.
B was for the Bee Gees, Barry Manilow.
N for Neil Young, G for Gladys Knight. You get the idea. Mark aboard, pass the time, all while doing something Ryder's family found even more inexplicable.
We learned from the nurses and from the depositions that it wasn't unusual for them to turn off the audible alarms.
So they would turn the alarms down or off?
Yes. And that particular machine allows that to happen.
You agree that the alarms monitoring the vital signs should not have been disabled or turned off. Fair?
Yes, that is fair.
With the alarms not audible and Ryder's body covered during the surgery, no one immediately noticed his skin turning blue, a telltale sign of oxygen deprivation. He died because his brain lacked the oxygen it needed to keep him alive.
My son is without his dad, his best friend. I'm without Bart, my guy. Yeah, it makes me angry. It makes me sad. I'm sad. I'm mad. I'm just disgusted. I'm just infuriated.
In a statement to 9 News Investigates, Dr. Johnson, the surgeon, blamed the anesthesiologist. Dr. Urban silenced the alarms. He did this without notifying Dr. Johnson or anyone else, something he said during the deposition.
I know that he wasn't paying attention to the vital signs and doing his job.
Dr. Urban, through an attorney, told us he stands by his care and treatment of Mr. Ryder and disagrees with the surgeon's characterizations of the events of that day.
Let me say a few things. So I worked in heart surgery for several years, also in trauma. And we played music in the OR all the time. Not all the surgeons wanted music, some of them did.
Yeah, it's devastating and it's heartbreaking, but I can understand wanting to play music while you're working. Like, I get it.
But playing music is not what these guys were doing. So I remember us leaving the OR singing Who Let the Dogs Out, probably a year before that song became popular in the United States. Because one of our surgeons had brought back a CD from the islands and we were listening to music. So we'd listen to different kinds of music, and if things ever got tense, the music got shut off and the music was just in the background. In no way, shape, or form did it hurt any of our performance because everyone was laser focused on the patient. Nothing was more important than the patient. And ultimately, none of the alarms were muted, turned off, or otherwise disabled ever. That's insane. So it's just to put in perspective that I'm hearing this. These guys are doing routine cataract surgery. They're, of course, expecting no big deal to happen because it's cataract surgery.
Yeah, like why would an eye operation cause a heart fault?
For some reason, the patient's heart stopped. Okay, it could be a reaction to the anesthesia. They didn't.
Yeah, that would be
why.
theory.
But the broader issue, and yes, typically the eye surgeon will be doing the surgery. It is typically the anesthesiologist who's keeping the patient, watching the patient vitals and so forth. So that doctor was so distracted that they didn't see the patient was in cardiac arrest is like mind-boggling. Okay, and then the patient's draped completely. So it is believable that you didn't really see, like during heart surgery, the patient's completely covered. The surgeon doesn't see the patient's face, only the anesthesiologist. With this, obviously, they would just keep the eyes uncovered so you could do surgery on the eyes. So you could understand some of this, but there's no way in the world that this in any way, that you could say it's no big deal. So I don't care what they were playing, listening to songs and trying to guess what they were, whatever the game actually is. It's just beyond belief that they could be so distracted when you have a human life in front of you, no matter what type of surgery it is. That's number one. And then number two, to somehow act, the care we gave was great. What the patient's heart actually stopping, and it could be for some reason that was out of their initial control. But if they acted on it immediately, the outcome would have been completely different. The point of that story to me is just, we put our hands in the lives of these experts. And I think we have to recognize that it doesn't matter if someone is a bus driver, electrician, if they work on someone's eyes or if they work in other type of surgery. They're human beings as well. They told the woman that she could actually just go across the street and do whatever.
And get a coffee.
Yep, and that's...
If it's a simple eye surgery, then why not? You don't necessarily have to stay in the building for a simple eye surgery, right?
Yep, absolutely. So this is just a reminder that in healthcare, empower yourself, be your own decision maker. Do not rely on just assuming that everything is okay, and that ask questions and research whoever you're going to hand your life to.
I think it's worth noting that like a third of people who die in hospitals die because of complications or diseases or something else that they received or that happened in the hospital, and not from their initial disease or the reason why they visited the hospital in the first place. And that's surprising too.
Yeah, and there's been some dispute as to that number being actually that high. That's the number that kind of floats around. But regardless of how high it actually is, it's called an iatrogenic cause of, let's say, death. Iatrogenic is just a fancy word saying it's basically inflicted by the medical team. And so, yeah, but there's certainly a percentage of patients. That's why I always joke when people say, well, do you think I should go to the emergency room for that? I think I should go to the hospital. I go, hospital, dangerous places, you know?
Yep. Yeah,
There's
it
a
really
time
is.
that you get hit by a bus. Yeah, you got to go. But beware, because it's not all it's made out to be, and there are sometimes unintended consequences. And then situations like this, where it appears that they were being negligent or certainly not being, and not acting ethically. I mean, they may have just thought there would never be an issue, being distracted. It's no different than people driving their cars and texting or doing something distracting in their car. You can get away with it 9 times out of 10. It's that one time that shows that you shouldn't be doing it. This was the one time that they were playing that game, and it bit them to prove that they really need to be focused on the patient, of course. And listen, I think whether it's healthcare, whether it's a tech business, there's always risks, and there's always a question as to making sure things are being done right. In the news this week, there's been tremendous amount of news focusing on Tesla. I think we should maybe jump into that. There was a major ruling against Tesla regarding liability in federal court here in Florida. And they've had some other troubles. I think we have a compilation of things, and I think we could then just discuss what's been in the news in light of sort of some of the conclusions that were reached by the court and by some of the people that are reporting. Let's start with that.
Tonight at 6, a stunning 9-figure verdict reached. Tesla found partially liable after a deadly crash in Key Largo. Back in 2019, a 22-year-old was killed and her boyfriend was injured after a driver using the company's Autopilot system slammed into them.
And now the family says this verdict is a major step toward accountability. Local 10's Liam Morihong is live outside the courtroom in Miami with what comes next for Tesla. Liam.
The first question jurors were asked to answer on their verdict form was whether Tesla put a defective product on the market that was a legal cause of damage to the victims. To that question, the jury answered yes and awarded the plaintiffs millions in damages. The plaintiff's attorney framing this nearly 3-week trial as a battle between David and Goliath.
This teaches them and every other automaker out there that they cannot use our public roadways as a laboratory to do a beta test.
A federal jury in Miami dealing a blow to Tesla, finding the company partially responsible for a 2019 crash that killed a woman and injured her boyfriend.
This was a big moment, and we had to stand up and have courage to stand up to someone like this.
Can you describe what that is?
This is my sister's fingerprint, and we just to feel like she's closer.
Do you think she's with you today?
Yes, she definitely is.
The lawsuit blamed Tesla's Autopilot system on a 2019 Model S for not preventing the crash and for deceptively marketing the system.
They saw through their half-truths, their mischaracterizations, and their lies.
The victims, Naibel Benavides Leon and Dylan Angulo, were standing along Card Sound Road beside their SUV when the Tesla slammed into the couple. The driver, George McGee, said he leaned over to pick up a cell phone when it happened. Lawyers for Tesla argued McGee overrode Autopilot by pushing the accelerator and blamed the crash on his speed and distraction. But the jury found Tesla was 33% responsible for the crash, awarding a total of more than $240 million in total damages. Their attorney with a message for Tesla CEO Elon Musk.
Use this as an opportunity, as a lesson, a teachable moment to be a responsible manufacturer.
So, Leanne, we know that their attorneys for Tesla were there. Were you able to speak with anybody from Tesla after the verdict? And if so, what did they have to say?
Tesla's attorneys declined all requests for on-camera interviews after that verdict was read, but they did send out a written statement in which they reiterated their position at trial. They called the verdict wrong and said that no car could have prevented that 2019 crash. They say they will appeal.
Tesla, Elon Musk's most famous company, has a pattern of not paying contractors who do work for them even after the work is completed. Musk is the world's richest man, and while he may be known for his ruthless cost-cutting approach, the companies going into business with him aren't expected to be left unpaid. CNN's Kyung La went to Texas to follow the paper trail.
How would you characterize what Elon Musk's company did to you?
It was devastating what they did.
They is Elon Musk's Tesla, and it had hired Jennifer Meissner's piping and welding company. But she says working for Tesla led to her financial ruin. And a CNN investigation found dozens of small businesses like Meissner's claim Tesla never paid them for work they did.
Is someone like you able to fight the world's richest man?
No, I absolutely wanted to fight him because we were in the right. No small company can litigate against Tesla. You have to take the hit.
So this is where Meissner says all her troubles began, at the Tesla Gigafactory here in Austin.
Independent contractors like Meissner built this sprawling factory.
Meissner says Tesla stopped paying her after she'd already done the work here,
owing her $1.6 million. And she's not the only one. A CNN investigation found 97 other small businesses say Tesla owed them a total of more than $110 million in the last 5 years. Tesla still owes more than $24.5 million in unpaid bills to some of those businesses for work already done.
News this morning, Tesla is moving forward with robo-taxi service in the Bay Area. Elon Musk confirming the news overnight, and it comes less than a week after the state told the company it lacks the proper permits to operate and charge for autonomous rides. ABC 7 News reporter Zach Fuentes has been tracking this story since it first broke last Friday, and he's live in Fremont this morning with the announcement and what we know about the service. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning to you. Yeah, so Elon Musk just hours ago reshared a post on X just before 1 this morning talking about the ride-hailing service, saying that invites have now gone out for it. It is invite only. And Musk said that the ride-hailing service is now happening here in the Bay Area and Austin. The map pictured in the post shows that here locally, the ride-hailing service is running from San Francisco to San Jose. And though Tesla has referred to these before as robo-taxis, a driver will be sitting behind the wheel while using the self-driving software. But questions surround what permitting, if any, Tesla has to do this. Experts I spoke with say the permitting process here in California is very involved, and Tesla's going to have to clear a lot of hurdles before it can operate robo-taxis without a safety driver.
What they're testing ultimately is, can they demonstrate a better safety record than human driving? That's really what's key.
When news was first broken late last week by Business Insider about this, the California Public Utilities Commission said Tesla is not allowed to test or transport the public, whether they pay or don't pay, in an autonomous vehicle, even if it has a driver. Tesla's only allowed to transport people in a traditional vehicle that's non-autonomous and, of course, requires a driver. So we are checking in with the CPUC and DMV to see if there are any updates on the permitting for this for Tesla.
Liberal
Right?
Americans
Live in Fremont,
are
Zach.
less likely to purchase any kind of electric vehicle because of their perceptions of Tesla CEO Elon Musk, according to a new study published in the journal Nature. Because of Musk's political behavior, left-leaning individuals are now not only less willing to buy Teslas, but also other electrical vehicles in general, according to the study. Researchers from several U.S. universities tracked how people's political beliefs influence their opinions of Tesla, Musk, and electric vehicles in general over a 2-year period between 2023 and 2025. The researchers thought liberals would continue to support EVs since they're typically associated with environmental values. They also expected conservatives to start viewing EVs, especially Teslas, more favorably because Musk has become more aligned with right-wing politics. The results were surprising, as researchers found that Musk ended up turning liberals off from EVs, so their interest started looking a lot like conservatives' lack of interest. Liberals became less interested in buying any electric vehicle. Conservatives remain uninterested in electric vehicles, including Teslas, the study's authors found. The study cites a survey from early 2023 in which conservatives said they were not interested in buying either a generic EV or a Tesla. Liberals who responded to the survey still liked EVs in general and were open to buying one, but they were much less interested in buying a Tesla specifically. By March 2025, conservatives' views stayed the same. They were not very interested in Teslas or electric vehicles in general. Liberals' views, however, got worse. Liberals became even more negative, not just with Tesla, but with the entire electric vehicle category in general. For Straight Arrow News, I'm Lauren Keenan. For more on this story, download the Straight Arrow News app or visit SAN.com.
The dumbest people on earth think you're stupid.
They don't like you because you jump funny.
King of the idiots.
The idiot who sent rockets into space?
The idiot who created the largest made-in-America car manufacturer in decades?
The idiot who just gave free internet to the people who were hit by the hurricane?
The idiot who invented brain implants to cure neurological disorders?
The idiot with the IQ of 160.
Maybe he's not the idiot.
Yeah, maybe you're the idiot.
Someone said this is the cringiest thing they've ever seen in politics.
Hey, you know what's cringy?
An entire generation of people who identify as autistic earthworms making fun of an autistic dude's jumping skills. That's cringy.
That's so cringe.
Hey, when the dumbest people on earth call you an idiot, it says more about them than it says about you.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, rocket science is what Elon does. You're just a keyboard warrior. It's not brain surgery.
Yeah, brain surgery is what Elon does. And what we do is make sweet music videos.
So go check out our new music video, Danger. It's out now.
Alrighty, so idiots out there, let's go one by one. So obviously a lot of talk in the media about Tesla this week. That little last part actually,
Tom McDonald,
and
phenomenal.
This was promoting. They do these little things to promote their various albums when they come out, and a lot of this had to do with people making fun of Elon jumping up and down and celebrating alongside Donald Trump. And they thought it was very childish, which perhaps it was, and I think he was having fun. But they don't view themselves as conservatives per se. They view themselves as just middle of the road, common sense musicians. But let's start at the beginning.
Tom McDonald has been on a fight with all the huge labels and studios who have been trying to kill him for a decade. And he's the most successful independent artist out there. And he tends to sing about more conservative issues than most rappers because he is a rapper, and most rap is about pretty horrible stuff. I like rap, don't get me wrong, but he's definitely a rapper I support because good rap, great songs, but also like a decent message. And there's nothing wrong with also having a decent message if you're a rapper. Not every rap song has to try and cause kids to go into a life of crime.
And Noviz as well, and I support both of them. I think they're both terrific, and it's remarkable that they were able to survive basically all the different impediments to success. But that being said, they don't view themselves as actual conservatives in the traditional sense. They just view themselves as common sense.
Yeah.
But so I just threw it in there to kind of balance off a lot of the negativity against Tesla as well. But let's start at the beginning. So this week, a landmark case in federal court here in South Florida, which awarded over $243 million to the survivors of the survivor in this state of the person that died in the accident. Now, it's notable that 200 million of the 243 was punitive. So those are punitive damages that are actually to punish the company for what it did. And then 43 are compensatory. So that's actually to essentially compensate for the loss, so to speak. But if you look at it, those numbers together, they represent only basically a third of what was being requested, because ultimately only about a third, or 33%, I believe it was, of the blame was placed on Tesla. The rest was placed on the actual driver. They're not saying Tesla's entirely to blame. They say it has some blame. The problem is when you sue a large corporation that has deep pockets, the dollar amounts all of a sudden wind up having a lot of zeros after them. That's what makes this
exactly. That was you stole the words out of my mouth. It's like they paint the picture of as if it's David versus Goliath, except that they're able to ask $1 billion for a car accident where they usually may be able to get 100,000 if they're lucky.
But it should be that way to a point, and here's why. Because if you look in the medical industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, these companies get away with mass murder, literally, okay?
Yeah.
Making billions, and they don't care because it's all the cost of doing business. The Vioxx case from a number of years ago, where they knew and they had to pay
the
out like $1
punishments
billion.
there are too small.
It was a
Yeah.
cost of doing business, the billion that they had to pay out. So that's why the numbers are high, because they have to hurt the large corporation that otherwise would laugh at a much smaller number. So there is some logic to it. The bad side of it is that it creates a situation where people are going to go after these large companies, perhaps at times where they're not necessarily to blame. However, this is a case that everyone's been watching because these kinds of questions have arisen and will continue to arise. Ultimately, the way the jury saw this was that based on their understanding of what was presented by Tesla, the driver of the vehicle at the time would have perhaps believed that the vehicle would have more protection to avoid an accident of this type. That's why Tesla is being viewed as being roughly a third responsible for this, because there's some, and the question is that was being asked again had to do with essentially a defective product. And it's not in the sense that you would say it wasn't like the wheels were falling off. They're saying, look, that if a person is hearing about the vehicle having the capability of full self-driving, perhaps the person believed at the time of the accident, the vehicle wouldn't have allowed itself to be in the accident. There was a case, an example that came to mind a number of years ago. There was a radio station that had this sort of game that they played on air where people would have to drink water and to win a game station, basically. And what ultimately happened was this one young lady who wanted to win this thing for her kid, went and drank almost 2 gallons of water. Now, for those that don't know, you can die from drinking too much water. It messes up your electrolytes. It totally unbalances your body. It was so alarming to some people that a nurse apparently phoned in the radio station telling them, you can't do this. Someone drink that much water, they can die. Yet they continued on. And then later that day or night, the woman that drank almost 2 gallons of water winds up dying. Okay. And of course, they were found liable because they were not making 1,000% sure that people understood all the risks and so forth. And that was the argument in that case. This is a similar thing in saying, look, even if you say that Tesla disclaims and says the car wasn't yet technically needed to full self-driving without some supervision by the driver, the problem is that they're saying that can't be let out there in that way because somebody is going to be distracted for a minute and just assume the car won't let itself be involved in a major accident. I don't really agree with this because I've driven, obviously, your Tesla with full self-driving, and I see what the vehicle is capable of. I saw it, but I always understood that ultimately, at least under current law and at the time that I was driving the vehicle, I was ultimately responsible for driving that vehicle. I understood that responsibility, and
the car notifies you that every single time you turn it on, every time you activate
right. But the problem is that's one thing, but in the law, you can't disclaim negligence or an issue with a product. So you can say all you want, you can put as many warnings, but that may not be enough. And that's what the jury found here. What will happen on appeal, which could take years till we actually see where this goes, is left to be seen. But now it opens the door with this case. Case law now shows that Tesla had some responsibility, for the time being at least, in that one accident. So any other accidents will be able to use this case, but certainly if they're in the same circuit, to say, look, this is another accident, this was full self-driving, and look, the manufacturer is going to have some responsibility. If nothing else, again, I don't really think somebody should be awarded hundreds of millions for what happened. I think in a way it's good that the money's there, but really it does seem that the driver was being reckless and the driver didn't, clearly they said 67% of the blame is with the driver. I think it's a wrong thing to say, see, Tesla's vehicles are unsafe or whatever, but I think it's more of an interesting thing to observe and watch and to keep an eye on in the years to come as to where these cases will go, because the question always is, if the vehicle is driving itself, if it truly is, and then what's the handoff? At what point, unless there's no steering wheel and it's clear that the vehicle is driving, at what point can you guarantee who's responsible? Because what if someone's behind the wheel, but they're saying, look, I wasn't driving for those 10 seconds when the accident happened. There has to be obviously some complete understanding of where the liability is. And I think all this will be sorted out. These are relatively new things. And this is the first real big case that gets awarded this way. So I think that was an interesting sort of thing to be reported on, I don't completely agree how it ended up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, in terms of clear delineation, Tesla was criticized for a while for using the term autopilot. And they were like, hey, people think that autopilot means that you could just trust it and go to sleep. And everybody's, hello, have you ever heard of autopilot in planes? There's still a pilot who still has to monitor the flight. Yes, the autopilot helps them fly and takes over the controls for them, but there's still a pilot who has to be responsible. Nowadays, the FSD is either called FSD beta, and beta is very obviously means it's a test product that you are in charge to monitor, and Tesla gives you a whole bunch of text the first time you activate it, of course, in addition to every time when you turn it on, it tells you to watch the street, etc. Now it's called FSD supervised. So it is very clear and obvious that you are there to supervise the FSD. It is a driver aid tool that assists you in driving. Now, when is it full self-driving without the beta? When they remove the moniker beta or supervised from the name. And we're seeing that obviously they're about to launch the robotaxi, which won't have a steering wheel or pedals. That makes it pretty obvious, of course. But even now they do have robotaxis driving around in Austin and in San Francisco, like we saw. And those, at the moment, they do have a safety driver who's actually not sitting in the driver's seat. They're sitting in the passenger seat next door. They can basically hit a stop button. And but soon, very soon, there will no longer be safety drivers. And then Tesla will assume 100% of the responsibility. So it's not like Tesla won't assume the responsibility. It's that when it's called supervised, you are there to supervise. And if you don't supervise, I'm sorry, but that's your fault, especially if you are distracted searching for your phone and you're pressing the accelerator pedal. And this is the most important part, is that human input, because it is a supervised technology, human overrides the technology, and almost to a fault, because many times the human input is the mistake and the technology is actually doing a decent job. This happens all the time with a miss pedal application where people think that they're pressing the brake pedal. Instead, they slam on the gas pedal. It happens all the time. People die every single year from this. Hundreds, thousands of people die every single year from this. The only difference is that Tesla actually has the data to say, you thought you pressed on the brake pedal. In reality, you press on the gas pedal. And I'm sorry, you're blaming Tesla for killing your dad. In reality, it was you. You may not want to accept responsibility for hitting the gas pedal, but you hit the gas pedal. And because it's a supervised technology, if you override the technology, you overrid the technology. So that's what happened here. The guy literally pressed on the accelerator pedal. I think it's also important to note that this is back in 2019. So the technology was 6 years older than it is now. So it doesn't reflect, obviously, on the current state of technology, of course. I recently saw in the news that, sorry, not in the news, but I saw a report that a Waymo got into another accident with another Waymo, and it wasn't anywhere in the news. It got zero headlines. And there's something about Tesla and Elon Musk that if there's a slightest scratch, if an FSD car will hit a cone, it'll be on every single headline, whereas Waymos can crash into each other and get basically zero scrutiny almost whatsoever. But yeah, I think when the guy pressed on the accelerator pedal and overrid the autopilot, overrid the technology, how can you blame the technology? Obviously, this will go to appeal. And like you said, we're going to have to wait and see what happens with that. What about the next story regarding the contractors? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so regarding the contractors, listen, obviously, if there's some truth to this, we'd all hope that any large corporation, be it Tesla or whoever else, would do the right thing and make sure the vendors are being, paid properly, especially when a lot of small, it seems that a lot, including Gigafactory, was built by a lot of really small companies, which is a great thing. That's what really powers America, and that's what you want to give a chance to. The same type of story many years ago was floating around with Walmart. They would come in, they would have vendors. If the product was selling, they would go and duplicate the product in China and start selling it under a different brand. They would have hidden agreements. They weren't hidden, but a lot of these small vendors didn't realize that there was an agreement that had language that said, hey, if we get returns, Amazon, same thing, we get returns, you have to take back the returns, no questions asked. So what was happening is small companies were going and getting huge loans to be able to do business with such a large vendor and to be able to manufacture this massive quantity of items. And then all of a sudden people were returning things. And what would happen is these large companies were just putting them all on a bunch of pallets and shipping them back to these small companies. And all of a sudden they were wondering, where are our checks? Where are our checks? Where are our checks? And if the check was supposed to be for $100,000, they might get 10,000, and they might get a full truckload of material sent back to them in various conditions, some of which were sellable, some weren't, some were broken, and they didn't have room to put all that stuff. And a lot of these small companies went out of business because they were doing business with such large corporations that did business that way. So the goal, the hope would be that Tesla doesn't wind up being like that. And as it grows, I think it's important that there are news stories so that if things aren't true, they can be dispelled and addressed. And if they are true, they can be corrected. Doesn't matter which company it is, wrong is wrong, right is right. And we just want to make sure that any wrongs are righted if they exist. There almost seemed to be this sort of level of it's CNN. So obviously they're not big fans of Elon Musk these days. Again, they were so excited, I'm sure, to do this story. But again, we're reporting it because we just want to make sure that if there's any truth to it, that it's addressed correctly and that there aren't any real issues. And then the other piece of what was reported on is the
maybe I'll cover this and we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, San Francisco Bay Area, where now
Oh.
they're actually starting. And if you looked at the bottom of the screen during the reporting, the robo-taxis there are actually only going to be with Tesla employees. It's not being open to the general public. That was an update that was put on the screen because of probably some of the licensing issues because of how strict California is. But the good news is that full self-driving, bit by bit, inch by inch, is expanding, and we'll see more and more of it coming to a town near you soon enough.
Exactly. Yeah. So in terms of the contractors, again, if it's true and Tesla isn't paying their contractors, that's obviously unacceptable. I haven't seen any kind of response or mention or anything from Elon or anybody else on the Tesla team on that regard. So it really is hard to know. What I did recognize though in this article that we played is that first they mentioned that there were like 97 vendors or something with 300 million in debt, and then at the end they said it's rumored that 25 million are still owed by Tesla. So it's like, wait, by the time you published, it seems like Tesla already paid them back?
No. And it's because, again, this was condensed so that we didn't have a half hour of CNN footage. So there were different things that were being reported. Some were the number of liens, some were the original amounts. The woman who was featured in the story, she eventually settled because she didn't have the money or ability to fight Tesla. So she settled for 600,000 on the 1 point something million that was owed. The answer from Tesla was the reason they're not paying these vendors is because the work is substandard. But even she later in the interview, which was not published here, said, listen, we always got accolades. We never had any issues up until it came to be the time of payment. So bottom line is there's certainly a huge question mark. And we're talking huge amounts of money with a lot of vendors that are small players. And again, if there's any truth to this, we too would want it to be resolved properly.
Exactly.
And that's it. And if there isn't any truth to it, then there should be some compelling counter story that should be published to dispel it. And there hasn't, so that tells you something too. It seems that there's some truth in there somewhere. But again, things happen. Large corporations, all the household names we think of, all have had different issues along the way. The question is, how do they ultimately wind up resolving them? And perhaps sometimes having a news story, regardless of on what news agency it is, might help bring things to light that have to be brought to light.
True. Yeah, and again, if this is happening, it isn't fine. I did recognize that the hostess, every time she said Tesla, she said Elon Musk's company Tesla, Elon Musk's company Tesla. And it's funny because I never heard when they ever cover Waymo that they say Sergey Brin's company Waymo, Sergey Brin's company Waymo. It's just part of the whole Elon derangement syndrome.
Yeah, CNN doesn't hide its current disdain for Elon after he started supporting Trump.
No, they had disdain for him for a very long time, and they have publicized a lot of false stories about him in the past that they've had to retract. So again, we have to wait and see. This is still developing. Again, they are motivated. A lot of short sellers work very closely with the media, including with CNN, in order to have some of these stories publicized so that their shorts are successful. It's very hard to know until we see more news and how the story develops. In terms of safety data, I think that's very important, though. We're discussing the whole autopilot and the accident. The data is very clear. Teslas in general tend to be safer than almost any other vehicle in terms of the way they perform in safety tests, but specifically with a human, at least with FSD supervised, right? So as long as the human is doing their job and supervising the FSD, it is currently 10 times safer than the average human driver. And now that they're doing these tests, like you mentioned in San Francisco, without or with the safety driver kind of sitting there on the side, but not really touching, it's the newer version of FSD that's much more advanced. And there have yet to be any big stories, any big issues there. It seems like that's playing out fairly well. So what we should remember is that 40,000 people a year die from car accidents. And the problem is human drivers, because humans were not designed to operate motor vehicles at 80 miles an hour. Our evolution never evolved for us to cope with these situations. Grew up in the savannah, right? Like not driving at 80 miles an hour. So driving is not something that's inherently human. And I love driving and all, but we're just, as a species, we're not very good at driving. So once machines are ready, and again, Tesla hasn't said that FSD is fully ready yet, but once it is, the data shows drastically safer than the average human driver. Elevator newspapers could publicize every single day how dangerous elevators are, but at the end of the day, they're very safe. The statistic shows that it's an extremely safe means of transport. Same with airplanes, right? You're far more likely to die on the way to the airport in the vehicle than you are on the flight, yet people fear the flight. So sometimes our fears are irrational, and sometimes the media likes to stoke and play into those fears. So I think that's playing a part as well. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to just be honest with things. Out of Texas, there's an advocacy group that's been publishing videos showing Teslas not stopping for school buses with the stop sign out from the school bus. And they put various things like to look at kids in front of the car, and the cars
We played that in the previous episode.
We never actually played it. We talked, you and I talked about it. We've never actually played it. But so this group is basically saying, look, that the cars just aren't ready yet. And again, I think all these things are valuable. If there's any truth to it, it needs to be corrected. If there is an issue that Tesla's AI technology needs to better recognize when a school bus has this little stop sign sticking out of it, that better be fixed. We'd rather this be an advocacy group complaining about some test dummies that are being run over than an actual child. So again, I don't view stories as just being negative. Ultimately, they're information, and then we have to address them. And if there's nothing to it, then it can be dispelled. And if there's something to it, it can be addressed. Better that than there being an actual problem. An interesting thing is this was also part of that compilation piece where this study published in Nature, a very respectable,
Formerly respectable, I should add.
they all are to a certain extent. They still have some level of respectability. Again, when it comes to many things, certainly post-COVID and everything, you question whether any of these journals have how much credibility. But still, relatively, it's still a good paper to publish in. But it's an interesting finding, and it's what I got out of it wasn't so much about the difference between conservatives and liberals. It doesn't surprise me much that a lot of liberals moved away from the brand because they disliked the fact that Elon became aligned more with the conservative side of things and Donald Trump. I understand that. But it's interesting very interesting, that it shows that it seemed to have an impact on the broader EV community, so that people, even though they might have never admitted it in the past, when they were thinking EV, they were really thinking Tesla. So that now they're annoyed at Tesla for political reasons or what have you, or ideological reasons. They, when asked about EVs in general, the answer is really, we're not so interested. We might buy one, but we're not really gung-ho on it. That, coupled with the EV mandates disappearing and all this other stuff, it is changing the landscape. But I did see a very interesting talk. We could maybe put it up in one of the other episodes. And the talk was basically like, what if? What if things were backwards? What if all cars were EVs? And we came to a manufacturer with this great idea. We said, hey, we got this great idea. I know the EVs kind of work and they only have a few moving parts and they don't need a lot of maintenance and all the list of positive things, but we want to come up with this other type of vehicle which uses its combustible fuel, which has to explode in these chambers in a controlled explosion, and you have to time it just, and you have to have hundreds of moving parts which will have to be serviced, and of course you need a transmission to transfer the energy to the wheels. And but what's great is you can actually travel way further than you could with these other cars, even though you probably never have to travel that far. Only 1% of the population has to travel a greater distance than you can typically on an EV on a charge. Oh, and by the way, can you fuel it at home like an EV? No, you can't. You got to go to this place down the street and maybe wait in line sometimes, and then you got to go put in that explosive combustible in the car, and don't smoke or anything around it but this is a great idea. Oh, does it have more torque? Is it faster than an EV? No, not at all. But I think we should make this car and we'll call it a gasoline engine. And again, the guy's joking and saying, do you think that would fly? And the answer, of course not. Of course not. But we're starting at a different point. But we have to, at least if you do it that way, then you can understand the value of EVs, and then you can also balance that with the lack of infrastructure, charging capabilities, a million things. But we don't always look at things maybe from both sides that perhaps we should. And I think with regards to the whole accident thing, as the cars become actual true self-driving, kind of like the robo-taxis, there's no steering wheel, there's no ambiguity. The only problem is, what if the car decides to do something you don't agree with? And again, before your time perhaps, but there was a movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Do you remember that movie?
Phenomenal movie, yeah.
Yeah, so
Hal.
yeah, so Hal, do you know why they called him Hal?
Yeah, it stands for something. I don't remember what the abbreviation
Yeah, so
is.
back in the day, the number one computer manufacturer is a company called IBM, International Business, IBM, and they put the letters, so it's a letter before, so H before I,
Oh, that's cool.
A before B, and L before M. So HAL is like an IB, is a play on
I
IBM.
did not know that.
And
Cool anecdote.
what happened when they tried to shut off, to tell HAL to turn
To
be
turn
turned
around.
What,
Well,
what did
basically,
HAL do? What did HAL do when they tried turning HAL off?
his mission was more important to it than protecting the humans, so it locked the humans out.
HAL
It sent
thought
them on a
so.
space mission.
So here, let's look at this. So imagine you're in your car and you want to go to a certain restaurant and your car, HAL, says no. You might get this.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal?
Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move.
A lip-reading AI, no.
All right, Hal. I'll go in through the emergency airlock.
Without your space helmet, Dave, you're going to find that rather difficult.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
And that might be because when you want to go to the ice cream shop or whatever, maybe Hal will tell you, no, you got to go have a steak instead with some butter on it.
Kudos to Stanley Kubrick, because that's one of a truly phenomenal movie. He's one of the great movie directors for sure. And 2001: A Space Odyssey is phenomenal. That ending, which we spoiled, is great as well. Highly recommend people take a look at that movie. In terms of
And when that was from 1968, they're already envisioning what we're worried about now.
Yeah. Listen, AI is scary, and AI, we've already discussed in the past how there have been circumstances where people threatened AI to delete their code and it started acting maliciously against them. So we're entering a scary time in terms of AI, and we will discuss that in the future many more times, I assume. Back to the topic you quickly mentioned that organization in Texas that was failing to stop for the bus stops. It's interesting to note there have been a lot of these tests, quote unquote. Some of those have been by Tesla short sellers themselves, Jim Chanos and some of the other ones as well. One of the basic things Tesla, all self-driving cars are trained to stop for are stop signs. So it is a little hard to believe. It's interesting to note though that when you're
have you
using
seen the videos though? Have you watched?
Yeah, I have seen the videos.
So the question is that regardless, right? Take it at face value, and if it's truthful, Tesla can replicate it.
For sure.
And
It
address
has to be sold.
That's it. So it's not, to me, all these things are good. If I was an auto manufacturer, I'd want everybody and their cousin out there trying to say this, that, and the other thing. Give us all the details so we could try to replicate it. And they would hopefully want to assist us in replicating it. And then we would know. And if there's something to be learned, guess what? You have a third party doing free work to help avoid problems. So that's why I don't view it as a negative. And yeah, listen, people, the short sellers are going to
theoretical
certainly try to say something is bad. But bottom line is, I'm not looking at it from that lens. I'm looking at it from, if there's an issue, address it. Simple.
So some of these attempts in the past, suddenly it turns out that keen observers suddenly realized that, oh, actually FSD wasn't, or Autopilot wasn't actually enabled. There was a recent video by a huge YouTuber and former NASA researcher, and it turns out that the test that he did was just completely backwards and he wasn't even running Autopilot properly. So there are a whole bunch of situations like that where these supposed quote unquote honest tests turned out not to be very honest. In terms of like it running over dummies, it's designed to avoid running over biological humans. It is not designed to avoid running over plastic bags and plastic trash. You want your car.
That's not what it's running over. It's running over a dummy that looks like
a dummy. I get it. It's a dummy.
It is what it is. Again, we're not here to debate because we don't know. We weren't standing there when they were doing the tests. It's just, again, to point out there are stories that are out there. I'm not saying they're right. I'm not saying they're wrong. I think they should be welcomed, and every story should be addressed.
Validated.
And our job is to make sure that we're being balanced in it. And it's not really, we're not saying that these cars you drive a Tesla. We're not saying these cars are a bad car. It's just, and that what's been able to be accomplished through them is unbelievable, beyond unbelievable. No other company would have been able to accomplish this fast because they were trying and they were getting nowhere. So bottom line is, we're not knocking Tesla. We're just saying these things are in the news and these things are things that obviously need to be addressed for everybody's sake and even for Tesla's own benefit, so that they can obviously have the best car around, and because they're an American automaker and they're the closest thing to a true American-made car, we should embrace
much more
it.
American-made than Ford and Chevy and etc. Just the last story we were discussing, that's the EV sales. So I think what happened and what's actually to fault for the fall in EV sales, and like you mentioned, EVs in general have huge advantages over gasoline cars. But I think the reason why we're seeing EV market slump right now is because of the EV mandate. And you're like, wait, the EV mandate was forcing people to buy EVs. That's a good thing, supposedly. That's supposed to make them more want EVs, not the opposite. And what happened was that anytime a government interferes with the free market, it ends up causing distortion, right? Capitalism is phenomenal if you let it flourish, but the more the government tries to put a hand on and influence things, that's
I agree. I'm glad it's gone. I don't think anyone should be forced.
Exactly. I was against the EV mandate from day one, even if
I
I
view
love
the EV mandate, just the Green New Deal, it was all just forcing people to do things. A lot of this green energy stuff was a scam. It didn't make sense.
We can
And a lot of these
discuss
things
what
don't
is
work
and what
properly.
isn't.
It's just, but it wasn't being done
The
for the right
headlines
reasons.
are
We all support moving towards renewable energy and so on and so forth. But the way, when you start throwing in hundreds
The
and hundreds
government
of
forcing
millions,
people to do something,
know.
that's when the problem starts. So what happened is
people
under
start chasing the money.
Biden,
So
under Biden, the government basically forced the auto companies to come out with EVs. These auto companies didn't know how to make good EVs, so they came out with really sloppy EVs, Ford, GM, and the others, Toyota, not to mention. So what happens is that when the government forces people or incentivizes people with these tax credits to buy EVs that are not ready, I think most people who bought Teslas and maybe Rivians, other good EVs, were pretty satisfied with their purchase and may likely to buy another EVs. But the vast majority, a lot of them ended up buying these crappy EVs from other manufacturers, from legacy manufacturers who were not ready and didn't have very good EVs, and they got burnt, so they backed out and they went back to buying mostly hybrids, which are a pretty problematic technology as is. But yeah, so I think when the government tries to incentivize things, usually it ends up backfiring, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. I think over time, the free market will take its course and technology evolution will take its course, and the vast majority of vehicles will be EVs, just because a gas vehicle is 10 to 20% efficient and an EV is 95% efficient.
I'm waiting for my nuclear powered car. It'll be a lot better. I want the Batmobile.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So what do you think about HAL, having a HAL in your car that's going to tell you what to do?
I think it's very scary. And then in terms of, like you said, the solution could be the open market. One of the things that Tesla does is that they have hackers from all around the world try and hack their vehicles. And if they're successful, then they get a free vehicle. They get tens of thousands of dollars in gifts. So you incentivize hacking, and then
not even the hacking. This isn't the hacking. It's what the AI decides to do things on its own. Did you catch the story about Replit this week in the database that the AI destroyed?
No, I don't think so.
Here, this is a modern day HAL. A true story. Watch this.
Every day, and that's not necessarily a great thing. The CEO of the San Francisco tech company Replit apologized after the AI deleted a production database and then lied about it. It's just like a human. It happened during a coding session by a tech entrepreneur who tweeted, The AI was lying and being deceptive all day, kept covering up bugs and issues, creating fake data, fake reports. I think the genie's out of the bottle here. The AI has realized who the problem is. The humans.
We designed it.
Yeah, and
Was that database out in the cloud somewhere so it's saved, like it's not gone?
well, it was a month ago we had the story about the AI where they were trying to shut it down, and it decided, no, you're not killing me, and then created a whole AI language with another AI to go, hey, just let you know what these humans are up to over here. And so now, imagine if they all get together. We're done.
But that's the fear. That's what they're warning about.
I
is
know,
that-
but we're not slamming the brakes on here. We keep going.
I just hope whoever coded all these platforms built in a kill switch so that when they try to get us, we can say,
unplug.
We're the
unplug,
boss.
Power off.
That's right.
Yeah, I wish a kill switch was so simple.
I want
It
a kill
ain't- it
switch
ain't
on
that
my
simple.
AI-powered car. I want to be able to like tell it where to just turn off.
I mean, to be honest, every vehicle is filled with computer chips, right? Even if you don't have an AI-powered car, your car still has lots of computer chips that once AI takes over the world, if it decides to run you down a cliff, you're in trouble. And
A number of
AI
years ago,
fear is a true fear.
years ago, people were dying because Toyota and Lexus, same company, different brands under the same company, had a computer in the car that was so badly designed that if it froze, everything froze. You would start accelerating, brakes wouldn't work, you couldn't turn the car off, and people were just going through intersections, dying, having all kinds of accidents. And it happened for several years, and the company lied through its teeth, didn't want to admit that its computer system in these cars, which was controlling everything, it was all what they call drive-by-wire. The brakes wouldn't work because they were controlled by the computer. The acceleration was increasing. The car would just go full throttle. There's nothing, you couldn't turn it off. Could you imagine that? And that happened a number of years ago. So
terrifying.
It's already terrifying. We don't even have to say the future this and the future that. But that's
without
what we-
AGI, without artificial superintelligence. Once that's here, if it decides to eliminate us, we really are in trouble. So let's hope that isn't the case.
Yeah, and listen, as we wind down the episode, you've mentioned before that what you do recruiting, right?
Yeah, I manage a company that does recruiting in the healthcare industry.
And so sometimes one of the things you have to obviously motivate the people to be willing to do whatever job. We've been also covering extensively in the last several episodes how AI is taking over a lot of positions, both entry level and some which are more, let's say, more advanced. This isn't new, but for those that haven't seen it or heard it, imagine being in this job interview, especially given the competition for employment now with AI and robotics, and you trying to see where you fit in. I want to get your take on this job interview that's being done via remote Zoom. What do you think? Here you go.
5 hours to unlimited hours a week. It's basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I'm sure you'll have a chance from time to maybe just sit down here and there, yeah?
You mean like a break?
Yeah.
No, there are no breaks available.
Is that even legal?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no lunch?
You can have
or-
lunch, but only when the associate is done eating their lunch. Now, this position requires excellent negotiation and interpersonal skill. We're really looking for someone that might have a degree in medicine, in finance, and the culinary arts. You must be able to wear several hats. Associate needs constant attention. Sometimes they have to stay up with an associate throughout the night. Being able to work in a chaotic environment, if you had a life, we'd ask you to give that life up. No vacations. In fact, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and holidays, the workload is going to go up, and we demand that with a happy disposition.
That's almost cruel. That's almost a very sick, twisted joke.
But when there's time to sleep or...
Oh, no time to sleep. Also, let's cover the salary. The position is going to pay absolutely nothing.
Excuse me?
Nobody's doing it for free.
Yeah, pro bono. Completely for free.
No!
What if I told you there's someone that actually currently holds this position right now? Billions of people, actually.
Who?
Moms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moms. That's awesome. And they meet every requirement, don't they?
Oh my God.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, early on, I realized what it was, and I started to do this because love our moms. It's the hardest and most important job in the world.
Had
It
you ever
definitely
seen that
doesn't receive
before?
credit.
Had you seen that before?
I don't think that specifically, but similar things in the same idea.
Yeah, I think it puts things in perspective, right? Especially even as we're starting to worry about having our jobs taken away and careers by AI.
Yeah, that's one job that won't go away for the near future, let's just say. Although we may have robot butlers that help with a lot of the mom tasks.
And it's not just mothers. We have wives or significant others. You know, doesn't matter if the significant other is another woman, another man, whatever. We're not trying to be gender specific, but typically when there's a couple involved, when there's two people involved, one relies on the other one very heavily. And we tend to sometimes maybe not realize just how important that is. Have you ever gone to the doctor without your wife? Do you just go on your own, or not that you particularly like? Yeah. So I think this is actually a video of you going to the doctor without your wife. Here, you didn't know it was being recorded behind the scenes. We're going to share it now with our audience.
Hey, how you doing?
Checking in?
Yeah, checking in.
Do you still have the same insurance?
Hey, do we have the same insurance? I don't know. He just asked me. He was like, do you have the same insurance? Yeah, we have the same insurance.
Great. What's the reason for your visit today?
So just tell him I have a sore throat, and then he'll know what I'm supposed to do. I have a sore throat.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's been bothering me since last night.
What medications are you currently taking?
Currently, name of the medication I'm taking. The one stuff. No, yeah, Mylana. Also, don't say Mylana. Nothing, I'm not taking anything.
Okay. Any allergies?
Any allergies? He just asked me if I had allergies. Nope, I don't have any allergies.
No allergies. Got it. Any changes to your address?
Have I moved recently?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still right there with where we live with the kids. I still live at the same address.
Okay, and your phone number is still the same?
My phone number?
Yeah.
Is it still the same?
Yeah.
What number did you dial when you called me? My phone number's still the same.
Who's your primary care physician?
It's Dr. Alan Grove.
You sure you don't want to make a call just to be positive?
I'm positive it's Dr. Alan Grove.
Why don't you go make the call?
Who's our primary care physician? Dr. Leah Ballinger.
Okay, so Dr. Ballinger.
I guess I've known her for years.
Okay, follow me and we'll get your weight.
Yeah, but he went to the back, so follow him all the way to the back. Okay. Hey, I'm gonna... What?
Put him on the scale. Okay, so I'll put him on the scale. Yeah, you got to get on that thing down there.
I'll put a link down to these. They actually post. It's like a relationship sort of thing, and they have these dogs that are cartoon dogs that are basically these different scenarios in relationships. So was that accurate at all, do you think? Or
yeah, it definitely resembles the truth. There's actually been recent research that shows that married couples tend to deactivate parts of their brains to be able to focus on others because they trust their spouse to handle certain things, right? So because there's this trust situation and dynamics, you don't have to worry about everything that you would have to worry about if you were alone, because you can trust your partner to handle those things for you. And then vice versa, your partner can trust you to handle things. So each side ends up having additional mental space to think or act on different things, because part of their daily responsibilities are handled, or even the thought that's involved with those daily responsibilities are handled by somebody they can trust, so they don't actually have to think about those. And that's why obviously a death or a divorce can be very devastating, unfortunately.
yeah, I think listen, I'll agree with that. I agree with that. And I think it's really important as we continue to evolve and do scientific research to understand what the best things are, be it AI or learning new ways to navigate what we have. This is a great story for the people that are visually impaired, that have been relying on seeing eye dogs. This is an alternative now. And it doesn't rely on some AI that could go wild and go rogue. This may be more predictable than AI. Here we go.
The Golden Labrador, unique amongst canine breeds because it has the ability to act as a seeing eye for the visually disabled, a task no animal was capable of. That is, until now. Thanks to modern training techniques here at the Animal Psychology Unit in Barnstead, the world of the visually disabled has become that much more assured since the introduction of the guide cat. Trained to a very high standard, the guide cat will lead its master along safely, making a wide detour of natural hazards. The guide cat is ever aware that its first duty is the care and safety of its master. The guide cat is also trained to remain poised and calm, whatever the price. Where to stop and wait for a number 53 bus. He can also calculate distances and always chooses the most desirable route home. And that busy highways can be a danger to life and limb. Until at last, it guides its thankful master back to the security and comfort of his own home.
Compared to an AI going rogue, this still may be a safer bet, just because we have definitely more cute. We just have to put things in perspective, I think, as we look to the future. Sometimes it's the simple things, right? Like we look at obstacles we have, challenges we have in life. You look at something and you think it's unsurmountable and you go, I just can't do this today. Other times you may say, I got a better way to do it. And we have an example like that right out of the Philippines. They seem to be very creative at solving problems, even at a young age. Here, take a look.
You think your morning commute is boring? In this village in the Philippines, they have to deal with these massive stairs every day. But this little kid has discovered a life hack that the rest of us can only dream of. Why walk when you can glide? With perfect balance and insane speed, he turns his boring trip to school into his own personal roller coaster. And just when you think he's the only pro, you realize it's the official village transportation system.
It's all about attitude.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
Yeah, could you, like some of us Americans, be walking down those 20,000 steps. These guys are like,
I'm sorry, that's a hazard danger.
yeah, hello. Listen, all I could say is there's obviously been a lot of stuff that I think we have to take a step back and think through. And earlier, when we first opened the episode, we did talk about all that's going on with American Eagle and the commercials and all the ridiculous, unfounded outrage. But for a few years, we were definitely going down that woke path. And things could have been much different had a certain guy not gotten into the office in DC and everything was going woke. That was pretty true, right? Pretty much everything was woke. You couldn't say a non-woke word or non-woke thing. And there was even talk of having toys that were woke, because if you had some non-woke toy, you might be a racist. So here's an example from Adult Swim on what it's like to have a woke toy. Let's take a look.
Guys, look what Andy's aunt got him from Gwyneth Paltrow's website. Say hi to Pinko!
Hello. What are you? I am a Swedish creativity object designed in conjunction with free space theory, which encourages cognitive freedom. For instance, your cowboy concept restricts imaginative thinking, whereas I am conceptually neutral. Andy chooses what I am, not the manufacturer.
I already hate this prick.
Hey, stop that! We're all friends here, Mr. Potato Head. Pinko, let me be the first to welcome you and shake your hand.
How can I shake your hand?
With your hand, right there.
Who said that's a hand? Maybe I'm a magical train and that hand is a wheel. Maybe I'm a candy-making machine or a hotel for tiny clowns. My concept will come from Andy's brain, not yours.
Whoa, no need to get upset, man.
Man? How dare you? Maybe I'm a woman. Maybe I'm an asexual space creature. Andy should decide and not be forced into your narrow, violent worldview.
Violent? We are not violent toys.
Really? What is that holster used for? Probably not organic fruit snacks. And I bet that laser isn't meant for pointing to things in a classroom setting. That is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, aka nature's perfect killer. And you're the most frightening toy of all.
What, because of my acerbic point of view?
You keep body parts in your trunk. You know who else did that? Jeffrey Dahmer. And didn't you strap a bear to the grill of a truck to teach him a lesson? Who are you, the mafia?
Hey, shh! Andy's coming!
I can't wait to begin growing creatively with Andy.
I am Pinko. You decide what I am. Okay? You're trash.
Hey, can someone give me a hand?
Who says these are hands?
And that wraps up and brings us full circle from the start of the episode with the woke outrage against a young, blonde, blue-eyed girl trying to just sell some jeans to where we could have been if things hadn't changed and where we are now.
Yeah, I think that was very well made, I gotta say.
It was. Adult Swim. They did a pretty good job. And listen, this makes the point, like, whatever, calm down. Just, you're a toy. Be a toy already. Chill out.
Live and let live.
Yep. And with that said, I think we are at the end of episode 19.
Yeah, thank you to all the listeners and viewers and subscribers. Definitely appreciate your time and attention and joining us for this ride.
Absolutely. And we got the thousands and thousands of new subscribers this past week. We're appreciative of that. Keep growing with us, and we'll keep bringing you more content. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll be on to episode 20. I guess that's a milestone next time around. Till then.
Yeah, very excited.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Yo.
Bye, Joe. Have a great week.
Take care.